Okay. Very good afternoon to all of you. Thank you for coming to this roundtable discussion. I'm sure you have come from various parts of Bangalore and some from Karnataka also, outside Bangalore. Thank you for joining us. So today we have 23 panelists with us, 3 joining online. And panelists are here. And this is first of a series on policy dialogue on the draft policy of the Karnataka Youth Policy, which has been now recently drafted. And in next couple of days, they are finalizing the draft youth policy of the state. So this is an occasion for us to give feedback on what are the gaps, how do we strengthen the policy, and also provide a roadmap for its implementation. So this being a student-led initiative, we are very proud to present to you this roundtable discussion.
That's part of the warm-up, isn't it?
Thank you. The order of the event for the first few minutes of this program is we request Honorable Vice Chancellor Sir to share his opening thoughts on the theme of the Karnataka Draft Youth Policy and allied areas, because we have different representatives, professionals, students, sportsmen, and all those who are in the domain of youth and allied areas. So with you, I request you, sir, to give us initial sort of inputs on how do we engage with this. Over to you, sir.
Thank you, Dr. Chetan. It's a great honor and privilege for Ramaiah University of Applied Sciences to take an initiative in such a policy dialogue. Here we are going to create the youth policy of the state of Karnataka, for which this is the apt place. When I look around left to right and the center too, I see all young people. That makes us the teachers to be embedded in you and its youthful and thoughtful process. Dr. Chetan, this step I personally feel is a step in the right direction. And considering our nation, the youngest country, and going to be the youngest country in the world, I think what could be the best occasion than embedding and meeting the people who have that great thought process. Any country, if they have to look forward looking, what is most important is how energized and how thoughtful, how ethical our systems are. With a legacy of thousands of years, sometimes we see it's a 5,000-year-old culture, the legacy. But I think if you look at the race, the human race, it has been going on even before that. So harnessing the best out of the legacy that we, the sons of the soil, have created over the years, harnessing the best outcomes, which whether it is a knowledge sector, whether it is Ayurveda, whether it is medicine, whether it is surgery, or whether it is a spiritualism. I think Indians have been always in the forefront. We had some of the schools of learning in this country, no more existing now. But that doesn't mean that we are starting afresh. I think with that capability, the capacity that we had, it is the Indians who have created the knowledge systems in many countries overseas, which today are also known as the developed nations. There are documents which indicate these facts. So I think today we are in the right atmosphere. Should we have it? If it is yes, what should this policy document contain? What are the best possibilities for the next 5 years, 10 years for us and for our youth to channelize their efforts and energies so that the concept of Atmanirbhar Bharat is also conceived at a global level. We know people who have been educated in the institutions in our country. I think they are making as well known as the Indian diaspora, but I think they have also been the brand ambassadors of our Indian system, Indian knowledge system. Based on these facts, I think discussions, deliberations, there have to be declaration contests too, the debates, what and what not. And let us try to extract some of the very, very important and the positive thought processes out of those discussions and deliberations. My generation was different, and this generation is different. And the generation that is going to come in the new fold now, I think you are going to be the torch bearers and setting the path forward for each one of them. In that context, I am very happy to be a part of this discussion deliberation. Surely I keep my eyes open, ears open, arms open, and my heart is also open to welcome all suggestions, thoughtfulness that will be discussed and deliberated by various committees. I am sure Dr. Chetan and his team will note down those, digitize those things. Let it reach to the larger segment of our diversity that India is always known for, and amongst the youth. We in the university sector have our own responsibilities. But I think if we had to make a change happen, it should not be only at the university level. I think we have to percolate down to those who are going to be a youthful energy of tomorrow. That means in the secondary schools. And also, can this thought process also percolate down to the school levels too? Whatever is to be done in that context, let's work together. An interesting aspect that India is going through at the right moment is the implementation of the new education policy. It is such a wonderful document, such a beautiful document. But that 46-page document should not remain in the black and white only. I think there is a time, it is needed that we start implementing. Whether we implement every segment of that that's expected by the high-powered committee, which was chaired by none other than very elite Padma Vibhushan, Dr. Kusturi Ranganji. I think there has been a whole sort of ecosystem that has been associated with it. To me, in person as an academic, the takeaways are that it's not confined only to one segment of people. It has diversity inbuilt in it, whether it is through languages, whether it is through creativity, whether it is through scaling of the sickles, or whether it is involvement of each one of us in Atmanirbhar Bharat and make India different and great, certainly. I think all these thought processes and your meeting and my being a part of that, I would say, it's the right sign in the zodiac that we are discussing something which is fruitful and shall be useful for the next generations. If my generation did something wrong, that does not mean that wrongness should continue forever. I think there have to be certain corrective measures which you should take. What is that? You are the best people. And when we say Janta Janardan hai, I think we have youth, the Yuva. Yuva hi Janardan hai, and then you are the people who are going to be the catalysts for the right change at the right time. With these words, I'm very grateful to you that you invited me to be a part of this discussion deliberation. I'm also very grateful to Professor Nandya Sen, who is the Pro Vice Chancellor for Social Sciences, and at Ramaiah University of Applied Sciences. Our Public Policy Center is a part of this school. I think at school level, at the departmental level, where we offer certain programs, as the master's program in public policy planning, there are many, many great opportunities. I am very eager that on this campus, let us plan and organize many such events, bring awareness among the youth and the university, which has such a diversity in the programs and also in the age groups. We admit students from age 18 plus till there is no end, because it is lifelong learning for most of us. So if this is the diversity of the age groups, sure that something great is going to come from these discussions and from Public Policy Center, which is a part of the School of Social Sciences. Thank you very much. I wish you great success, and I'm looking forward to listen to all young people, amongst whom I have always grown as a young teacher to the old man now. Let's listen to you. Thank you very much. Jai Hind, Jai Karnataka. Thank you.
I'm very happy that you have made my job easier by introducing Professor Anindya Sensor to all of us, but it's my duty to introduce Professor Anindya Sensor, who is the Pro Vice Chancellor of School of Social Sciences and the Ramaiah Institute of Applied Sciences. So, with due respect, may I request you to please share your opening remarks for this roundtable. Over to you, sir.
Thank you, Dr. Chetan. First of all, let me welcome everybody to this conclave. And it is not only our own faculty members, some of whom are here, uh, our students of public policy, but it is extremely heartening to see so many students and other uh, young leaders, I might call them, from outside the Ramaiah system. So, welcome to all of you. I would like to begin with a small disclaimer. This organizing this meeting and calling all of you together and so on, the credit goes not to me, but to our team headed by Dr. Chetan and especially the students of public policy who have been working very hard to make this into a successful event. So, VC touched on this, but I would begin by saying that in some sense, I feel like a dinosaur lecturing to Homo erectus. The dinosaur knows that he is on the way out. The meteor is going to go and strike him out of existence. But, and the world will go on to the Homo erectus and Homo sapiens and finally what we have here. But still, maybe even the dinosaurs had something of importance or something useful to say to the, new generation which were coming. So we, both of us, I think, grew up in a very different kind of a world altogether. The world has changed significantly, especially the last 20 years. It's a different place altogether. There is much more volatility. It's not only within India, but global volatility. There are many more challenges which we have to face. And one of the things we have increasingly realized is that whatever we have done will have significant effect on the future generations. This is becoming increasingly clear. Of course, climate change is one of those things. And, I am an economist, so from the economic point of view, there has always been a huge problem, which is that whenever, say, suppose I play loud music in my hostel, you are in the next room, you are feeling unhappy, so you can come and talk to me and try to persuade me. So there is a process of negotiation which can happen. But the biggest problem, which we all now realize, is that I am doing something, producing negative externality, which is going to affect the future generations who are not yet born. They are not there at the table, right? The only thing we can do is to probably, get in touch with a younger set of people, okay, who would probably be more in sync, with the generations which are yet to be born, who are coming. So it is their views, their take on world affairs, which is going to be increasingly important. Uh, and I think that the mistake that we often make is that we look back on what we had as a golden age, and we do not understand how younger people are viewing what is happening right now, what, they are interested in, they are trying to do, what is important for them, what is not. So this forum, I think, gives a sort of a voice. Now you have a policy which is framed by the government, some committee or other, but please don't take that policy as the ultimate kind of a thing written in stone. You know, these policies, if it is a youth policy, must have inputs from all of you. Be prepared to severely criticize or go against these, say that certain things we have to do, certain initiatives have been taken, the new education policy, Atmanirbhar Bharat and all that, how they are working. Do you want them to work in the way they're supposed to do, or do you think certain other things should be done, right? So there are many inputs which can come from you. I think that we would like to be more of listeners and observers, and try to understand what your concerns are. And primarily, uh, you should have a dialogue, have a conversation amongst yourselves. This is a forum for that conversation. And I thank our team for making this an offline session. You know, we are increasingly getting tired of all these people coming on the screen and, you know, half the time, you know, they disappear from the screen. You don't know what they do, but it's good to see you face to face. And thankfully, we can now take off our masks, at least for the time being. Apparently, there is a slight uptick. I hope that we will not again be forced to, you know, have masks on every possible occasion. In fact, now they're saying that while flying in airports and all that, you should be strictly having masks. But at least in this room, I can see all the faces, okay, bright, shining faces, okay.
Can't say all.
Well, you know, he is the exception who proved that. He sort of tells us how important it is not to wear a mask. Okay. No, if you want to keep on wearing the mask, please do so. No pressure. Okay. But I can tell you that we, both of us, have been teachers for many more years than we would care to remember, frankly speaking, you know. And so, and we have been always, except for the last couple of years, meeting our students face to face, interacting with them. And that, you know, what happened in the last couple of years. So now we're very happy to see all of you here, to see your faces. And now, you know, I invite you to now engage in the conversation, dialogue, discussion, uh, short of actual fisticuffs, you know, that would be interesting. And if you start actually physically fighting with each other, that would also be interesting. But I hope that we will not get into that, but we can fight with each other verbally. So, so that is it, and I hope that this will be a successful event. Wish you all the best, and I hope that more of these types of engagements keep on taking place. You know, I'm pretty sure you will be able to carry on this. Is this one of a trend, or are we can we look forward to more such events
On this theme.
on this theme?
Yes. And then subsequently we'll have some follow-up on this, some write-ups and blogs and so on and so forth.
So we'll be very happy to. I am pretty sure Dr. Rana agrees with me that we'll be very happy to host you and have more fun.
Undoubtedly, we want to create a platform, friends.
Yeah.
Today we can discuss and deliberate.
Yeah.
And I will take cue initiated by the organizers for Dr. Sensei to fight for a cause that this becomes an ideal, globally acknowledged policy document. There should not be a fighting afterwards.
Yeah.
We may fight in the beginning so that this document becomes really the idealistic one and people will watch it. Yes, this is where youth power is. This is where the conceptualization is. And this is a document, a policy, which everyone and every nation would like to borrow from us. Thank you.
In that context, I'm happy to inform you that we have Aishwarya Anand Kumar on the screen, who is a member of the policy drafting committee of the policy.
Oh, good.
And she has agreed to also share her inputs and has given a kind of blanket permission for us to be very critical. Right, Aishwarya, I'm right to say that?
Very good.
Yes.
I didn't know that she was
No, I'm
watching
glad-
and listening.
You have heard her, maybe that she wanted to. Yes, Aishwarya. You want to say something in quick point here?
Yeah. So firstly, thank you. As in having such an event itself encourages us. Can you hear me? Am I audible?
Yeah, you're audible, yes.
So this whole process actually started in September of last year, and we're around 14 to 15 people, committee members. I'm the only woman member, as some have pointed out actually, and it's unfortunate that it is so, but we have tried our best to collect as many opinions as possible from across Karnataka. From we actually concentrated on the rural belt, the urban belt. We went to the coastal areas of Karnataka, the northernmost areas of Karnataka, and of course Bangalore, where the highest concentration of youth is in Bangalore. it so happens. And we went across Karnataka, the committee members, and sat in every district and did a consultation meeting. And post the consultation meeting, this is the result of the consultation meeting. And but it doesn't end here. This is just a draft policy, and we want everybody here, because the kind of experience and knowledge all of you carry will only add to this policy. And we want this policy to uh, truly make a difference in the department, and thereby make a difference in the young people's life. That has been our sincere objective throughout the past 4 5 months. And the fact that today so many of you are here uh, to discuss this uh, really shows that the work that we have done will not go wasted. So thank you.
Thank you for,
Thank you.
in fact,
Be in a habit
yes.
of clapping because it energizes each one.
So
Yeah.
that's a sort of an assurance, and also it's kind of, building our confidence, Aishwarya, and she has also assured us to meet them and hand over our feedback document. So that's very
Yes.
nice of her. Thank you so much. Now I
Yes,
request.
that will be the
yeah.
most important part, sir. I
Yes.
think we're all looking forward to that.
Thanks.
So
Yes, we will do. We will do. Now
Yes.
request Gauri to uh, express the vote of thanks for the inauguration.
Thank you, Vice Chancellor, sir, Pro Vice Chancellor, sir, and Aishwarya, ma'am. Thank you. So, your leadership has always inspired us to work harder and achieve better. And like you always say, we'll make our alma mater proud. I'd also like to thank my classmates for facilitating this. Yeah. Here we have formally come to an end of the inaugural session. We'll now break for a small tea session. And my friends here will help you out and guide you to NOC, which is right here. Thank you.
So after that,
How about a tea for Aishwarya because she also spoke.
so that is.
Jason is going
So
to.
I will come back to claim that. I will come back to the campus to claim that
Try to
one
provide
day.
to everyone.
Yes, sir.
Is that?
Yes, definitely, sir. I will break now for, actually, it's a sort of informal networking tea coffee, so that you become comfortable to criticize after you come back. Thank you. Please join us. Actually, we'll come back to you in a few minutes. Please. Thank you. Ms. Aishwarya, we are back from the tea break. I hope you got some time to get your cup of tea. As thank you. Yes. So I think during the tea break, most of the discussion happened. So
Oh,
now
okay.
what you hear is going to be the outcomes, I'm sure. So the proceedings is as follows. For the first few minutes, we will have our students Gauri and Shafana make a brief context-setting presentation of few slides in order to bring everybody on the same page. Very brief. Followed by that, I would request Aishwarya Anand Kumarji to make her initial intervention, specifically talking about the process, because most of us here are not aware about the insider's view of the policy process, which is, I believe, is a very important component in order to also engage in a dialogue. Then we will have an open house discussion, inviting each one of them. We have consciously kept the introduction away for some time, for the sake of time. But when you make your initial intervention, please introduce yourself very briefly and then have your inputs shared with us when we call you for the discussion. So each individual, you are the best to introduce yourself because we might miss out something important. So that is the order of the event. So first, a short presentation, then Aishwarya coming in and sharing the insider's view of the policy, draft policy, and then open house discussion. Okay. So I now request Gauri to make and Shafana to make their short presentation. Over to you, Gauri and Shafana.
Thank you, sir. Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome back again to the Draft Karnataka Youth Policies discussion. Before we start the presentation, I'd like to take you through a small disclaimer. Please note that the session is being recorded and is being aired live on our YouTube channel as well. An excerpt to the feedback that will follow the discussion should also be with the names of the panelists present here. So while we're here to discuss the Draft Karnataka Youth Policy, I'd like to bring your attention to why we should be discussing youth. From World Boxing Championship champion Zareen Nikat to Srihari Natraj and Aditi Ashok, who have represented India in Tokyo Olympics 2021, we know that youth is making India proud everywhere. But are we equipping our youth enough and well? Well, according to UNESCO data for India 2020, 75% of the youth is enrolled in secondary education, that is from 11 years to 17 years. But only at 29.4% of youth has enrolled for tertiary education, that is between the age of 18 to 22 years. But what really defines the youth and its future, and why is youth important? Did you know that the youth population in Karnataka has actually increased by approximately 20% from 2011 to 2022? And then the draft as well projects certain metrics according to which Bangalore urban district here in Karnataka has the highest youth population, and which is about 21.7. You can all see it on your screens. And the second highest youth population in Karnataka is in Belagavi district, which has about 7% young people. So this highlights the need for a support mechanism for youth in the state. Let us just go through some highlights of the draft. And so the draft basically talks about changing scenarios of the world. There are three changing scenarios that it addresses. The first being technological progress, where the gap between technological progress and upskilling of youth is being addressed. The other being COVID-19 pandemic and other humanitarian crisis, where it is highlighting how COVID-19 and other crises have impacted the lives of youth. The third one being changing demographic structures. The draft claims that it is until 2028 that Karnataka has time to make the best out of its demographic dividend. The second we are talking about youth in this draft in two dimensions. The first one is that youth as an individual, and then it talks about youth as a part of the society. So this brings us to a whole new context of youth development and youth for development. The policy also highlights 6 key areas where it focuses on education and training. Then there is employment and entrepreneurship, and we have health and well-being, sports and fitness, art and culture, and value-based leadership development. There is an introduction of a new concept called as Youth Development Index, where the policy draft aims to measure the 6 focus areas that I just mentioned. Then there is a proposal of Yuva budget, wherein we will be streamlining the funding for various youth schemes that are being run in the state and to facilitate proper financing and funding of those schemes. Lastly, there is one more administration approach that they talk of, which is of 3 C's, wherein we talk about coordination, cooperation, and collaboration. And this 3 C's is supposed to happen between the different departments that are engaged in youth affairs and development. Now, challenges will be taken over by my friend Shafana here. Over to you.
So, as my friend Gauri has taken you through the draft and the policy, as any other policy, this current policy also arises a lot of challenges, and I take you through the key challenges that is proposed. First of all, is defining the youth. So there are many international, state, and national policies on youth, and all defines the youth population under different age categories. And the current policy defines youth as a population under 15 to 29. So what is the criteria that made them choose this particular age group? And also, can age only be considered as a criteria to consider a population as youth? And secondly, is the balancing of sectoral differences. As any other state in India, Karnataka has also seen a lot of increase in the rural to urban migration. And how can this migration, how can this imbalance be brought in the geographical and economical, throughout the geographical and economical sectors of Karnataka throughout the youth development? And does the policy address this sectoral differences? And thirdly is the collaboration. The policy has proposed a collaboration in between different departments of the government. And as all of us know that this is going to be a Herculean task. And how can an effective collaboration be take place? And last but not the least is the implementation stage. All policies are introduced in keeping in mind of certain objectives and aims. And the aim of the policy is fulfilled through the implementation stage. So what strategies can be taken in hand to get the more out of it through in the implementation stage? And finally, I'll just take you through a short run through whole of the presentation. That's first of all, it's the gender representation. So even in the 2011 census and the infographics in the draft of Karnataka Youth Policy, there is a skewness in gender representation. As throughout this throughout the nation, we can see that there's an unequal representation of male and females in the workforce and also in the education sector. How is this addressed throughout the policy? And the second one is the Youth Development Index. The proposal of the Youth Development Index, which is intended to monitor and evaluate the youth development in the state. And finally, the importance of implementation. As we have discussed earlier, how the implementation can be fulfilled to the maximum so that we can get the most results out of the policy. As we all know that the previous policy of 2012, only 30% of the policy was implemented. So we will have to, what all strategies we will have to take in hand to get to make a successful implementation of this policy. And the final slide is the point for discussion, which you all can have a look at it. And now we are declaring that the presentation has been concluded and the dice is open for your roundtable discussion.
Thank you, Gauri. Thank you, Shafana, for such exhaustive but also in-depth analysis in a short time. Thank you for sharing that. Now, Aishwarya, over to you, because now we have set a context from what we understand from outside, but your context from the inside of the whole drafting process will be very useful for all the members. Over to you. Please open up your thought process, please, on this discussion. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chetan. Firstly, I want to thank Shafana and Gauri because they've really made my task easy. Uh, in a very detailed and crisp manner, they've covered what the policy encapsulates. The initial idea when we started working on this was to say that there are two concepts. There is youth for development, that is, youth is the beacon of hope, youth can save our country, and all these things that we have heard, that youth can change the course of the country, which is all true, by the way, because there are lots of young people sitting here. It's of course true, as in uh, the in that age group of 16 to 29 or 16 to 30, one is at their prime, as at their most energetic, most active, most ideal stage of life. But our core belief, the committee members truly believed that it shouldn't be youth for development, but it should be development for the youth, which will therefore result in development for all. And this has been our main idea behind the whole policy. That first we will do everything possible to ensure that our young people have the best resources available to them, and this will in turn result in development of the nation. And Gauri actually even spoke about something called as the uh, I think it's called the dividend. What is it called? The
Demographic dividend.
Demographic dividend, exactly. So what we noticed is presently the number of people who are young outnumber the people who are above the age of 29. And this is going to change in the next 5 years. That is, after 5 years, the number of people who will be dependent or who will be above the age of 29 will be much higher than the people who will be in the youth bracket. So we have actually, in a way, if you look at it, we have 5 years to really utilize this demographic dividend. Uh, Now this is and actually I think India as a whole has a larger number of period to do this, but Karnataka being one of the most developed states, it has a smaller demographic dividend window available for it. But of course, people are also becoming younger. 30s are the new 40s are the new 30s, and so on and so forth. But that was our core idea, that it should be development for the youth. Uh, Firstly, I want to speak about certain challenges that the department had, and we wanted to resolve those challenges to ensure that we can bring in development for the youth. One of the main challenges that it had was the structural challenge. Structural meaning, when we talk about the youth, its issues concern, for example, if we talk about a youth who belongs to a scheduled caste or a scheduled tribe, then the Ministry of Social Justice also has power to has jurisdiction to work on it. When we talk about young women, the Women and Child Ministry also has jurisdiction to work in it. When we talk about education, you have the Ministry for Education. So the jurisdiction of the youth empowerment and sports department was spread across other ministries. So it was not clear what exactly the youth department should be doing. That was their biggest you could call it a flaw in the system, where there were a lot of projects, a lot of budget money being allocated to different ministry, and all of them were partially working on youth related issues. And the youth department itself didn't know about this. So there was a requirement to bring in some amount of synergy between these various departments and the youth department. That was one of the first challenges that we had. Uh, is this too? And then the second most important challenge, I think, that there existed was there was no strategic direction that the youth department had. What should it work towards? For example, the Youth Empowerment and Sports Department has two, as the name suggests, there are two departments under it. There's the sports department also. Now, the sports department has very clear goals. They have, which can be measured. Their goals are, okay, we have so many sportsmen, we need to ensure that we get so many medals, so many sports stadiums need to be built. There are very clear measurable goals available. Whereas this youth empowerment department was lacking that measurable goal system, based on which it could seek for budgeting, it could also function. So that was lacking. That reward system, that okay, this goal exists, we meet that goal, budget is allocated for that goal, and then we have met that goal. That was lacking. And therefore, this policy brings in YDI. YDI, that is the Youth Development Index. This is one of the kind sort of measure. This has been, no other state has adopted this. Even our country doesn't have a YDI at a national level. Karnataka will be the first state to implement YDI. And thank you, Gauri, for explaining it. And YDI is going to be a kind of a, you can call it a carrot for the department, but it's also going to be a tool for the citizens to hold the department responsible, to say ki why is our YDI so low today, or why is the YDI not increasing. So this will be a tool in the hands of our country's youth, our country's citizens, to hold this department responsible. And it also gives a very clear goal system, clear goal to the department. And that's why this very simple, small concept of YDI is going to be groundbreaking. This policy recommend that. The third challenge that we saw is that the lack of manpower in the department. And to sort of resolve this issue, and the main issue behind that, of course, is the fact that we didn't have sufficient budget. And we realized that the budget is being distributed amongst different ministries, not like that. So the fact is that there are many schemes for the young, but these schemes are not streamlined. The department all these schemes and saying, yes, people are getting benefits out of this scheme. This is the expenditure for this scheme. That was lacking. And therefore, the Yuva budget, the youth budget, is a concept where the already allocated budget amount in different ministries will be tracked by the youth department. So the money that's allocated to primary education, to higher education, money that's allocated to young women in the women ministry, the money that is allocated to young Dalit students through the Ministry of Social Justice, all of that will be tracked. And there will be once it is tracked, it will be easier for the youth, for the citizens of our country to go to the government and say, why is the allocation so low or so high? So this is another tool that this policy will be giving us. So all in all, of course, there is room for improvement always in any policy document. And I'm happy that we are having this session today. But I feel like this policy is a groundbreaking policy document if implemented. And after this, once we submit the policy document, our whole energy as a committee member would be to see that it does come into action.
Yeah, thank you.
So,
I think that's also sets the context for our subsequent discussion. I'm sure you are there with, will be there with us to listen to the subsequent dialogue.
sure. Yes, I will stay on. Yeah.
Yes, thank you. With this, I'll open up the roundtable discussion on specific areas. So let me go to Dr. Vasanna Patkundi, because the policy anchors on the vision of SDGs, Sustainable Development Goals for 2030. That has been the vision, and also uses the SDG as a timeline. So there are two sort of issues or directions. One is the theme and the other one is the timeline. So now I request Dr. Vasanna Patkundi to maybe share his initial thoughts. How do you see the draft youth policy sort of engaging with SDG and about also the timelines? Over to you.
Yeah, thank you at the outset. Let me thank Dr. Chetan for having me
Please
invited.
introduce.
Yeah. Yeah, for having invited me to be part of this panel discussion. I'm Dr. Basanna Patugundi. I'm the Chief Learning Officer at Swiss Learning Exchange. We have a learning ecosystem for students, teachers, entrepreneurs, and everybody, and we focus more on sustainability space. So when I looked at the draft of the policy, uh, no doubt there's a mention of sustainable development goals in the initial part of the policy document. Later on, I think somewhere a lot of other recommendations that the committee has made, somewhere we need to link that with sustainable development goals, right? And also, I have a different view on the sustainability aspect, which I was discussing with Honorable Vice Chancellor sir during the break. The sustainability from a global point of view is we measure through all those 17 goals of United Nations set by them and agreed by 193 countries. But I think when it comes to the context, in the Indian context, sustainability goes beyond those 17 goals or the indicators which have been mentioned there. Sustainability is more got to do with sustainability of our legacy. When I say our legacy, it is the youth which has to continue what we are trying to do. It is nothing to do with the ideology or any other thing, but it is what we've been doing, right, since ages, that has to continue. So how do we bring in that component is something that I need to find in this document is what I was thinking, which probably could be an area that we want to bring in from the Indian sustainability point of view. No doubt, I'm not questioning the 17 goals all of us have agreed upon, which is good from an environment perspective. But when it comes to the Indian context, it's more got to do with how do I, you talk about the practices what we have, right? Be it the ancient education system, right? How do we do it, right? So from that point of view, if we are able to link, then it may be a good idea. And from sustainability point of view, what I also thought was, of course, the policy document is quite exhaustive. Probably I should have mentioned that in the beginning that I should, congratulate Balasubramanian sir and the entire team for coming out with such a big document. It's not an easy task. But I think, to really implement all these things, purely looking from a sustainable development goals perspective, I think the demography that we have, right, the age group, what we are going to cover in this youth is from 15 to 29. If we can break it up into multiple, because we cannot have one size fits all, right? When it comes to sustainability, if you are going to talk to 15-year-old kid, the perspective is totally different. Probably you're going to talk to somebody who's 25, 26. So that has to be brought in is what I thought. There are some other observations. Can I mention that now or can I?
If it is about SDGs, sure.
Yeah,
Quickly in 1 minute. and then
those
come
are,
back to you.
yeah, those are the main observations which, from a sustainability point of view, one, we should go beyond the 17 sustainable development goals, what it means to us in the Indian context, drive that through our legacy as a sustainable, practice. Plus, one size fits all may not work when it comes to sustainability.
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Prasanna. I think one point is quite evident is how do we localize
Right.
sustainability, because that's something which is also critical in the context of the youth policy. Now, may I request Mr. Nayakara Viresha, who is from the Institute of Social and Economic Change, who has also been our adjunct faculty at the Department of the Policy, to kind of provide your insight linking this aspect to the issue of decentralization, rural development, because that's where the local is, in the sense of what Dr. Vasan was also talking about. So what are your thoughts on this so that we can improvise the draft and our inputs? Over to you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Chetan sir and the team. At the outset, I would like to thank the committee for coming up this timely document. I am saying the word timely because we have the National Youth Policy document also, which is in the public domain. And the Government of India also invited the suggestions from all over the youth. Before the deadline is just 13th of this month. So in that context, I am saying it's a timely document.
So you want to introduce yourself to all
Yeah.
of us also.
Yeah. Myself, Naikara Veeresha. Currently, I am pursuing my PhD from the Institute for Social and Economic Change in the discipline of political science. And I have also had the opportunity to teach MA Public Policy students of the MS Ramaiah University in the Department of Public Policy. And I have taught the Panchayat Raj and Rural Development paper for the third semester students. So coming to the specific points in the context of decentralization, I have gone through the policy document. The 6 areas which the policy actually focuses upon. If we see the other than the value-based leadership development, which is one of the focused areas, when I looked up on the other 5 areas, such as education and training, employment, entrepreneurship, like that, I couldn't see much the vision of the policymakers to localize and to decentralize these focus areas is have not come out that much forcefully. It is there in terms of uh, uh, areas only, but that may not be sufficient if we are really looking in order to achieve these goals on or before 2030. Much more is required. I will just give one illustration, sir. Suppose let us take the role of education. When we say role of education, in fact, the Constitution of India, in the 11th schedule, in the 29 subjects, we have this education. But when we see the policy document, the engagement of the local government institutions in disseminating and creating awareness among the local youth in different arenas. I think that's where the role of local government institutions has to be given more primacy if we are looking forward achieving the sustainability aspect also. Uh, uh, the the policy document also, when I read it out, has not touched upon the aspects of the dropout rates after the post-COVID. Because the current statistics do not take into account. Because all of us might have read the dropout rates has been enhanced after the post-COVID. So we don't have the either the surveys or we have some studies from the Ajim Premji universities and other studies. But the point is that we need to really look at the some of the nuances if we are really looking in terms of the implementation aspect. In that context, my thoughts are that other than the value-based leadership development focused area, I feel much more prominent role has to be given to the local government institutions. This will also take care of the previous resource person has touched upon the localization and the sustainability. If we really want to achieve the localization of the SDGs, along with that, we need to give the enhanced role for the local government institutions.
I will come back to later on what are your recommendations on
Yeah.
strengthening the link to local.
Sure.
Maybe that way we could now request Dr. Prashant Desai sir to maybe highlight, because Mr. Aishwarya really highlighted on the fact that one of the major challenges is the governance challenge. And also Naikar really mentioned about it. So how from constitution point of view, how do you see that how we can connect the governance challenges can be resolved, and what are the challenges that you foresee? And introduce yourself, sir.
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Chetan. Myself, Prashant Desai, and basically I'm a student of law, and now I'm a teacher of law as well. So I congratulate and appreciate the efforts put by the team in formulating and bringing this particular draft, and which was very much necessary. And I think if my knowledge serves me better, I think it is the first youth policy which has been brought in, because I really have not come across any youth policy as such. With a lot of aspirations, in fact. Enable holistic development of youth in the state and empower them to bring about constructive societal change. I would like to draw the attention of all my learned colleagues here. When we talk about, or when we have a lot of aspirations, when we have these principles, guiding principles, we should always draw our attention to the preamble, because Dr. Chetan was pointing out what are the constitution, because we are talking about governance. Everything is fine. How we are going to implement? Is there any policy? Is there any law? Because when we talk about the constitutional aspects, even after, because we are now going to celebrate Amrut Mahotsava, Azad Amrut Mahotsav, right? Could we be able to interlink between fundamental rights, directive principles of state policy, and fundamental duties? The basic idea of not having fundamental duties at the initial stage when draft constitution was created was there was no requirement. Only because in order to have that kind of a document, in order to have that kind of chapter in the constitution, we went for 42nd constitutional amendment and brought fundamental duties. What does it mean? It means there is a requirement of making the people to know what their duties are. Because nowadays, even now, we are talking about only rights, not duties. Very sorry to say. When you are talking about rights, we are also required to relate our rights to the duties. If I have a right to speak, then I should also see my speech should not be affecting the right of the other individual. And we are talking about holistic development in this particular policy. That is where, when I was referring to the preamble to the Indian Constitution, which talks about justice, social, economic, and political, how you are going to achieve. Even after so many decades of having this particular constitution, we did not achieve social justice, economic justice, nor political justice. I may be little, what you can say, realistic and radical as well. There is a requirement of throwing some kind of light. What we are doing? Are we only creating policies and keeping it in the shelves, or really want to bring it into force? That is the first thing which is required to be brought in. And health and well-being, because I'm just, of course, I would be coming after whenever there is a requirement of, but when we talk about health and well-being, right to health is a fundamental right. And reciprocal principle is also there in directive principle of state policy, as well as fundamental duties. That is where I talk about interrelationship. It is not there. We have Prevention of Narcotic Drugs and Psychotropic Substances Act, one of the oldest law. And nowadays, when we are talking about youth development policy or youth for the development and youth, what is that? Youth? Development for the youth. Right? What a nice saying. But educational institutions have become the platform for these narcotic drugs and psychotropic substances. And how, if this is the condition, how we are going to develop youth? And how you are going to expect development by the youth? Because again, we are failing in bringing that kind of implemented governance part. And we talk about value-based education, value-based leadership. Is that how we are going to develop leadership qualities among our students? I'm sorry, this is not the right way. When we are, on the other hand, we talk about leadership development. On one hand, we talk about value-based education. we have forgotten that particular guru-shishya relationship. Gone were the days. And you all know, the historical documents talk about that relationship. Do we still have that kind of relationship in the current educational system? No, not at all. But this is where there is a requirement of counting those lines with what aspirations, with what values and mores our framers of the Indian Constitution went for drafting this particular Constitution. And now then only we are going to talk about holistic development. Otherwise, there will not be any kind of holistic development which is going to make any kind of a change in the society. That is where, when we are required to talk about the youth development by the youth for development and development for the youth, then it is very much seriously required to be thought how we can eradicate this.
Yeah, so since you have very interestingly pointed out, one is at a meta level, the challenges of implementing the constitutional values at the ground level. But the other important point which I want to take a cue and now invite Kirtan for this thought, because education institutions. So, Mr. Kirtan, you have been in the forefront of this education institution right from school to higher education as a lead in terms of building this institutional setup. So what are your sort of reactions to these aspects of SDGs, issues of what Dr. Prashant also mentioned, including fundamental duties and how students should respond? So after that, I would come to Jyoti Shankarji for the Unat Bharat perspective after Kirtan. So maybe I'll come to you first.
Right. Thank you, Dr. Chetan.
Introduce yourself.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Kirtan Kumar, working as CEO for Soundar Group of Institutions and also a lifelong learner. So I'm part of this meet here. So I would like to appreciate the committee members on giving a wonderful draft. And I feel there is a lot of change from 2014 to the policy draft which is available now. So there is structurally, I feel it is very, very concrete. And of course, when it comes to implementation, I think that's the narrative what we are here right now. So what I would like to say is of course, now we have different, when we are an education institution, we have to build, students, abilities, a societal connect or have, concern for social issues or a national per se. Now we have NCC. NCC is a strong body for any institution. It builds nationalism and also patriotism, which develops. And we have NSS, which builds, kind of social services schemes which are available. And we have other now we have other organizations like Nehru Yuvajana Kendra Sangathan. Then we have there is Fit India, Khelo India. So I feel that every organization that is functioning for youth are working in isolation. So we need, because as an institution, and also to talk about inclusivity. So SDG goals talk on inclusivity. So institution with interest, we support NCC or NSS. And we are self-financing and there is no support from the government. Even at NSS, there might be a very bigger amount which comes from the government. So we feel there has to be integration among different youth organizations, be it NCC, NSS or NHYS or any other youth organization have to be integrated. And when it comes to the 4.1, the implementation part, so it says about 3 C's approach. So we feel, reiterating what Naikar sir said, the role of educational institutions in because at the policy level, there is a lot of, structural definition, but how are you going to at institution? Because we feel, teachers are the ones who will be playing key role in developing the youth, because of course we want to develop, huge workforce for the country, but there is a gap between what the world of work requires to the world of learning requires. So integration of different organizations is required. And in terms of value-based leadership, so what I feel is innovation in terms of school teachers have to take up innovation roles, by, because this is not seen at the forefront in the state. I feel, they have to find out the social issues in the, in the periphery of at least, 15 kilometers, identify social issues, can work with Atal incubation centers. There are Atal incubation centers that are just there for, of course, to support entrepreneurship. So if these kind of innovations can be supported, school systems, teachers can be a very huge catalyst of change for the youth. So these are my
Thank you,
remarks.
thank you. Jyoti Shankar sir, given that point that we were discussing on how critical are education institutions, you have been leading the idea of the practice of the Unnat Bharat Abhiyan as part of the DTSLD. So how do you connect these issues and see a value add from those kind of initiatives in order to appreciate the youth policy, draft youth policy, and how we can enhance its sort of contribution to youth? So what are your interventions there, sir, especially keeping that as a background?
Thank you very much, Dr. Chetan. I'm Jyoti Shankar from Ramaiah University of Applied Sciences. I'm representing the Directorate of Transferable Skills and Leadership Development. The very first point that is mentioned in under value-based leadership development is the development of youth towards rural development. We have mentioned about Gram Panchayat development. Absolutely a very good and novel idea. However, focus should be, I suggest, I recommend the focus on convergence of various schemes and departments from the central schemes to the state schemes. And somewhere there is a mention about the supporting, strengthening the support system through a nodal officer at every district, a policy for development, one nodal officer for Unnat Bharat Abhiyan and in every district, probably in Zilla Panchayat. That is one. And when you're
interviewing, but could you just give one liner or two? What is the Unnat Bharat Abhiyan?
Okay. Sorry. Unnat Bharat Abhiyan is a flagship scheme program from the Government of India, which is aimed at rural development involving higher educational institutions, where we bring in our knowledge, skills, and other support systems, work with the government machinery, with various government schemes. We own or we adopt villages for their holistic development. And we work very closely with all government institutions and machinery. Now, the idea of developing youth for towards rural development, if that can also produce certain good quality leaders to take up the political scene, people with education, good education, and with good training, that would really help. The leadership by the youth, by educated youth, will help in convergence of all these government schemes. Number one. And number two, kindly take care of who trains them, who conducts all these leadership development programs. Please look for accredited institutions, certified organizations with a national fervor and a truly pluralistic outlook. These people should be the ones who should be conducting the leadership. And the third point which I was looking at is the measurement or the development index. Can I touch on that also?
Yeah.
The development index. Development index. One of the main points that you had mentioned was the indicator was the youth participation rates in civic engineering schemes and the programs. I feel that is not sufficient. You should please be measuring the outcome, how efficiently these programs were implemented, how exactly were there the linkages between these programs and subsequent different projects, how they were interlinked, ultimately the efficiency of program execution, how competently or competitively they were executed. You may please examine that, because we have fantastic accredited institutions in our country. Please make use of them. There are highly qualified and very good framework to train and develop competencies in program management. We are talking about program management, a lot of rural programs management. The youth need to be managing these programs, social projects and programs. They need to know how exactly to do it. Yeah. And with lot of bringing in all kind of competencies here, with efficiency, scope, cost, and with the time and the resources, managing all this. Enough of cost overrun, time overrun, and scope overrun, enough of all this. This youth should be able to manage this program. We are capable of developing youth with the highest level of these competencies. Please make use of them.
Thank you so much. So I'm actually.
Mr. Chetan, can I come in here briefly?
Quickly, yeah, please. Yeah.
To Mr. Jaishankar, I just wanted to
Jyoti Shankar.
thank you for your points.
Yes. Yeah.
Mr. Jyoti Shankar, sorry.
No problem.
Yeah, thank you very much for your points, sir. So I just wanted to point out that presently what we have in the policy is something called as the social reward system. So social reward system, what it would entail is every student who does any kind of civic engagement activity or any activity with NSS or NCC or with the Nehru Yuva Kendra, then a kind of credit system will be created saying so many points are allocated to you, some kind of reward system, so as to monitor all this. So that we have put in place here. But of course, you said that that's not sufficient. You should also look at the outcome. They do a civic engagement activity, but what really came out of it? Now, that's a very good point, because we know that in our Indian context, many times there is tree plantation happening, there is gardening happening, but on ground, nothing is actually happening. So that is something that I'll definitely bring to the attention of the committee. Very quickly, I want to tell Mr. Kirti. He said there should be, sorry? Kirtanji. Sorry, there is some technical lag.
Yeah. No problem.
So he pointed out many points, one of which was that there is no sync, as he very correctly mentioned, that the Nehru Yuva Kendra, the Yuva Sablikarna Kendra, all these organizations work in silos. There is no interaction between these departments. So what we have now done we are trying to bring in an advisory panel, a youth advisory panel. Now, this panel will give that continuous monitoring and strategic input to the department, saying, look, this is happening here, this is happening here. So this is, of course, we can make the mechanism better, but this is a start. We have put that in place. Mr. Desai ji said that of course, there is a right-based society, which is the US, where everybody says, okay, what is my right? What am I getting out of the government? And there is no thought about what should I be doing for the government or for the society or for our people? Like, what is my duty to the people? And this is something that we also thought about. It is one thing to say, to demand that the government should give me this, but shouldn't it also be our duty to build this nation? I think that's what you were saying when you said that what is duty something, as a young person, are we inculcating that attitude of having responsibility towards their elders, towards the environment around them, and towards the government? And to do this effectively, we thought the best way to do this is to give the power in their hands. So if you look, very interesting thing, what we have done is at a local body level, there is a youth committee in every ward. So we have said that 2% of the funding that will go to the committee, to every district, funding, these people will monitor it. As in, it will be under their control. The youth committee will decide on how that 2% of the funding will be. And 2% is a big amount. I don't have the numbers in front of me right now, but it will be under their control. And we believe giving some amount of governance powers to the youth will inculcate that responsibility in them. Of course, there are other ways of doing it, but this is one thing that we have. And of course, I think Mr. Nayak also said it, and Mr. Jyoti Shankar also said it, that bringing more young people into the political sphere, into the governance sphere, that will bring in that duty-oriented mindset that I should work for my society and my people. But a lot of young people came to us and said, we are ready to do it, but nobody wants to give us that responsibility. So this is one policy where we are trying to give that responsibility to them, so that then they can show us that they are actually working for the society. This is in page number 25. You can look at it in the youth policy.
Shwaraji,
But-
thanks for the intervention for now, but if you don't mind, can we
Yes.
come back to the separate points?
Sure. Yeah. I'll
Yeah.
let
But-
everybody, I'm
Yeah,
sure
Professor
there's a
Sen-
time.
Professor Sen has an intervention, but thanks for the clarification though. Professor Sen has.
You just intervene at this
Yes.
point because I might forget about this and
Please, sir, please.
You see, I come from West Bengal. And this uh, policy of setting up youth committees in every district and all that, I would just like to alert you to this problem that if the youth committees are set up by the government, constituted by the government, funded by the government, then there is every possibility of these becoming political tools. We have to understand certain things. Now, the thing is that ultimately, whatever you do, whatever structure you set up should be helping the youth. They should not be diverted from that task, okay? So I'm just hoping that some of you, I don't know the answer, some of you will suggest some ways of insulating these youth committees from, political interference and having enough autonomy to work for the, problems faced by the youth rather than other kind of.
That's good. I think that leads to, I think Dhruv. Dhruv has been in the forefront, our collaborator from Bangalore student community, who has been leading, I think, more than 1 million sort of group of students in a way, but directly or indirectly. But I think what Jyotish Shankar ji said and what Professor Sen was saying, how do we enhance that leadership, which is objective, at the same time, who is able to have the autonomy? And what challenges do you see on the ground with this sort of interventions?
Thank you, Chetan sir, for passing the floor to me. So, good afternoon to all the delegates present here at the Karnataka Youth Policy 2022. Like sir said, I run a student NGO, the Bangalore Student Community. Consists of school and college ambassadors, representatives all across Bangalore city. So quickly moving on to what I wanted to say is the youth policy, again, inclusive, progressive, attempts to provide new opportunities for the youth in Karnataka. And it's quantitatively driven, which is very motivating in terms of assessing how the progress is. So before running through my suggestions, I would like to bring to your attention that this document does merely mention the age group from 18 to 29, but it does not exactly specify the significance of this age group, because very funnily people in our state and across the country, people at the age of 40 and 50 consider themselves as youth. So, I mean, if you are formulating a policy, it is extremely important to signify what are the roles that will be played for this age group and make sure that they are the beneficiaries of this policy. This policy should not be catering to people who are above the age group of 29 as specified over here. This is my opinion on this. And coming to my next point, I also would like to say that to my best knowledge, the policy has not addressed cyber and social media to its fullest capacity. To support my statement, I'd like to say that there are different surveys, one conducted by the West Virginia, which says that close to about 9 hours is spent on an average by youth on social media. I'm aware that recommendation 3.3 speaks about ill health on digital media, but what I'm coming to is that where is the policy speaking about the safety for women over here? You have youth spending 9 hours on social media, and even, for example, the India crime the India Computer Energy Response says about 50%, 56% of cyber crimes are committed by youth between the age of 16 to 25. So where are you addressing the fact that women on social media are targets because of this age group? Why isn't the youth policy addressing this? This is also a very important point. And last, my final conclusion remarks. As I am a representative of the student community, I'd like to state that there has been very, very little done for the students within the state and nationally. There is no student award function, like that was mentioned before, Shriyari Nataraj, Aditi. How many of us know that Devdat Padikar, who represents RCB from St. Joseph's College? Why are we not felicitating students? Right? There are students. I know that there is a point that speaks about art and culture, but why only art and culture? We must be looking into entrepreneurship. We must be looking into sports and every other field. So these are my final remarks, and I'm also hoping that the committee looks into also getting in inputs from the opposition parties as well, because the committee members here seem to belong to one specific sort of arena. So that would also be a great opportunity in order to find inclusiveness for this policy. Thank you.
Yeah, so the last point, is just to quickly clarify and ensure that there is objectivity on this point. I think the policy would own sort of journey to get into a gazette form, so there'll be debate. So I'm sure it will be, and that's a part of democratic exercise. And but I think the initial.
Yeah, just can I intervene? Huh?
Yes, sir.
Interruption, disruption for innovations also sometimes do that.
Welcome, sir.
I was just going and listening. Thank you very much, Dhruv and all members, listening to Aishwarya's comments. Just, we are not in the age group 29. Yes, as a nationalist, as one nurturing talent in this country, in that capacity, Dhruv. The data, the statistics that is given here.
In fact, Professor, that is the fundamental duty of yours.
Ensuring if was a disruption is because I wanted it to be. You see, when I look at the some statistics that is given in the draft policy document, it goes back to stats of the census of 2011. What has happened since then? There are a lot of changes. I have seen myself in the last 11 years. Can we get some updated statistics? If youth can't get it, do you think this senior citizen is going to get it? I think you have the right. Try to look at the documentation, put it, because if we are going to finalize some policy document, it should be as on 22, not as on data 2011. One. Second is empowering youth is certainly a responsibility. Let's make this youth empowerment apolitical. That's my suggestion.
Yes.
Because what you can harness, I think it also came in the discussions, what Professor Sen said, my colleague, that make it independent, autonomous, and also let's try to see that what are going to be the resources for financial needs, because nothing can survive empty. हिंदी में बोलते हैं ना, खाली पेट भजन भी नहीं होते हैं. I don't want you to be empty stomach, but I also want you to see what are those resources so that we are not influenced by X, Y, or Z. We have our own rights to say, and I think I support that. This is my observation, and thank you very much. I have a meeting at 5 o'clock, but I was very eager to listen to your all comments. When it came to Unnata Bharat Abhiyan, what Mr. Jyoti Shankar said, I think the perception has to be different. It is not a definition of Unnata Bharat. I think foresightedness to make Bharat a different entity on the landscape of the global community is our objective. I have been associated with Unnata Bharat Abhiyan for about 7 years when I was in Uttarakhand. So we try to do a lot, adoption of the villages. I think empowering the villages, that's where the real Bharat is. So can we, as a part of the youth power, make it happen? In case you can, I can be of some help and support at any time. I'm always available. I wish youth all the success. India is youth, and youth is India. Thank you very much.
While we continue the discussion, now this is being recorded, so we'll be happy to share that out of subsequent and also the draft report which will be submitting.
I will request both Gauri and Shafana that if you can bullet certain important points.
Yeah,
Send on my mail I will go through.
Yes, yes,
Just in case I'm in a position to give some inputs, I'll be very happy.
yes.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
And just to also add, while sir is leaving for the meeting, I'm sure, Aishwarya, we know that there are some projections in the document. We are thoughtful about it, but we'll come to that discussion eventually. I'll come to you, sir. Sir, Shivram Deshpande ji from Samarthan Foundation.
Yeah.
So,
I will be earlier and less detailed.
Yes, yes.
we'll come back to you, sir. Please. Yeah, please.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. So Shivramji, I will come to you because there is a flow of thought which are coming. I'll come to you. Don't mind about that delay. I think it is important also we see there are other points which are coming in terms of the physical well-being, mental well-being, and issues associated with social media. I think we need to now gradually move into the health component, which I also feel there has been a lot of emphasis in the draft. That is health and well-being, sports and fitness. So these are two important themes. So I can request Ashwini ji to share your inputs as part of the Mukta Foundation, which is committed to the prevention of interpersonal abuse and promotion of mental health across the range, from I would say early childhood to what is cradle to grave, as they say, the entire stretch. Over to you.
So my name is Dr. Ashwini.
I want to speak a little louder to the mic there on the.
My name is Dr. Ashwini MV, and I come from this organization called Mukta Foundation. As an NGO, we are committed to empowering communities to prevent various forms of abuse and violence. So first of all, Aishwarya ma'am, thank you for representing women in the committee and, for formulating this, the draft. I have 5 quick points to share. First and foremost, I thought one of the focus areas could also be interpersonal safety. Along with health and well-being, I think interpersonal safety must be highlighted. So like Dr. Chetan was pointing it out, there is no way that we could be overlooking various forms of violence, such as, let's say, bullying. Dating violence is something that we are not talking about, but as a psychologist, I know on a daily basis the number of cases that we are seeing of dating violence. Because domestic violence at least gets acknowledged, whereas dating violence certainly is not. I think the previous speaker also spoke about, crimes on the cyberspace. I think that needs to be included. So is sexual harassment at workplace, harassment at the public spaces. I think that needs to be focused. And I think one of the metrics can also be crimes against youth and crimes committed by youth. And I think the data is something that's available, and therefore that's something that we really must be taking into consideration. So that's my first point, which is let's also focus on interpersonal safety as one of the focus areas, maybe under health and well-being itself. Yeah, there is a possibility. Now, the second idea that I wish to propose, ma'am, is could we be promoting the concept of peer mentorship? I think there's an emphasis on value-based leadership. What is peer mentoring? Peer mentoring is there is enough and more evidence that somehow the youth are more comfortable to opening and talking about their problems to other youths way before they come to professionals, such as, let's say, mental health professionals or the legal, the professionals. So some of the topics that I think we could be empowering peer mentor. Peer mentor could be a youth maybe in a college who's really looking forward to support other youth, and maybe we could set up a plan to train such people. Some of the topics that I think we need to be training these peer mentors are, let's say, on gatekeepers training of suicide. As a mental health professional, I can tell it to you with certainty that way before a youth commits, I think committing is a wrong word, attempts and dies of, the suicide, there are always warning signs. So if we could empower youth to recognize these warning signs and be of support to other youths, I think it's a great way to prevent suicide. And the document highlights, statistics on suicide, and that's quite, very upsetting. So gatekeepers training on suicide is something that we could be looking at. Another important point could be the concept of psychological first aid. the physical first aid concept is so widely spoken and people are also getting trained in it, whereas psychological first aid is a concept that has a lot of potential to prevent certain health risks. So I think that topic is something that's worth training our the youth in. Now, few other concepts that I wish to talk about, ma'am, is mental health literacy, at least about common mental health disorders such as, let's say, depression, anxiety disorders, because the document talks a lot about substance abuse and dependence. But a lot of times that's an outcome, whereas the cause could be certain other common mental health disorders such as depression and anxiety. I think, therefore, mental health literacy is a must. I also think legal literacy is a must, because I have met youth, youngsters, asking, is there a law against bullying? Is there a law against ragging? I didn't know there was, therefore I continued to. Or asking, domestic violence, is there a law? So when we don't know law, then there is no fear of the same. So the law is strict, but we only implement it after it's committed. So I think legal literacy is also a must. I'm sitting right next to a journalist here, and I thought, media literacy should be part of the training that we give to youth, ma'am. Media literacy is simple fact-checking skills. With the number of things that get circulated and youth having access to technology, if they're not empowered on media literacy, I think we may not be achieving certain things. Let me not take a lot of time, just 3 more points. The third one is, there's a lot of emphasis on career counseling, which is fantastic. But then in a lot of organizations and states, what I've seen is the career counseling is more conversational. It's like, what do you like? This is what you could get into. But could we be a state which will promote assessment-driven career counseling? When I say assessment-driven career counseling, should we come up with assessments? Maybe translations are required of interest-based assessment, personality tests, then aptitude test, and then come up with a comprehensive support system for students to make the right career choice. Now, the fourth point I have is, we're talking about holistic development of youth, and I think we cannot be forgetting children and youth in conflict with law, especially because we are defining the age range to be from 15 to 29. I think children aged 15, 16 are there in the observation homes. And we need, I think the policy, would get that much stronger if we could have some systems in place to empower these youth, children and youth in conflict with law. Maybe we'll be the first, the policy to have that component in the policy. And I think that would be a welcome addition. Now, the last point that I wish to make is, I think the previous speakers were talking about, accredited institutions giving the responsibility of training. I think that's needed. Along with that, for any training, I think we need to make that commitment to standardize modules, whatever be it. Whatever be the topic that we are aiming to empower the youth with certain skills, I think those modules must be standardized. Because I've seen sometimes, let's say, mental health modules, each one, we have our own takes on how that must be communicated. And I think, therefore, efforts must be put to standardize all the modules that we plan to train the youth in and then take it forward. So with this, I rest, and these were my 5 points, and
Thank you.
more power to the committee. Yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you so much. I'm sure we are also documenting those pointers and subsequently come back to you also for further clarification. Thanks so much. I think from the health point of view, again, we do have experts who are here, who are assembled to share their thoughts. So, people, Dr. Sonali, because she will introduce herself, but I know her for quite some time now as part of our Ramaiah group of institution. But her foray into nursing is being quite recognized. In fact, very soon she'll be going to Geneva to represent also. So, Dr. Sonali, what are your thoughts on some of these issues, but how youth can interpret? Because you are seeing the nursing component quite.
Thanks, Chetan, for making me part of this group. And good evening to all. I'm Dr. Sonali. I head the Nursing College of Ramaiah here. So I come from a health profession, being a nurse, and I'm heading the nursing college. I'm principal for last 10 plus years in nursing education. So I think I relate to two things. One is health and one is education. So I would just, I think the major point before I start, I would like to acknowledge what Dr. Ashwini was talking about mental health. I had that in my list because being a principal of a college of nursing, I can actually say confidently that around 25% of the students that study with me have some or other kind of mental health issue, and which includes what she addressed, either anxiety or depression, and which I agree with her later leads them into getting into either alcohol, tobacco, or substance dependence. So I think that needs a lot and lot of attention in this youth policy because that's going to lead to a massive destruction of youth in this country. So mental health is very, very important. At the same time, I feel the physical health also is very important. One thing I want to actually congratulate Madam Aishwarya for including these metrics. I remember in her opening speech, she talked about these youth development index. I think this is a very positive thing because you have measurable outcomes. When we don't have measurable outcomes, we can simply keep talking about we are going to empower something and we don't know whether it's empowered or not. So looking at I was just looking at these metrics in health because I relate to that. I see here malnutrition indicators included, low BMI and anemia. What I just want to make a point is the health-related, this nutrition-related problems vary based on whether the youth is in rural part or urban part. If you look at the urban youth, you will actually find there's overnutrition and there is obesity today is a problem. So that also needs to be taken in consideration. Apart from that, I think one major issue which relates to girls or ladies is menstrual hygiene, access to menstrual hygiene that can be probably focused on. Apart from this, I think healthy lifestyle, Madam was talking about teaching them as to how to recognize symptoms of mental illness or probably how to have some good lifestyle practices that would keep your mental health in good shape. Similar way, physical health, the very simple things that we need to teach today's youth, I believe, like good eating habits, sleeping practices, exercises, which needs to be emphasized and taught, which are very simple, but since they are very simple, people feel that they don't need attention. But these are what lead to other problems. Regarding youth mortality, one metrics which is put here, I think road traffic accidents is the number one killer of youth in this country, and there has to be some kind of a program taken up to educate youth on prevention of road traffic accidents and road safety. Apart from this, I think behavior change counseling cells, which would help them to change their behavior in terms of risky behaviors which relate to their physical health or mental health. Those would probably help. So that's all I had to say about the health part. Coming to the education part, what I have observed, since the second part is youth for development and development for youth. From the development from youth aspect, the government has started a lot of skill development programs for the youth. However, in my observation, these programs haven't been doing very great because the programs are not matched with the local needs of the youth. Like in health sector, we have the general duty assistant programs or home health assistant programs that are brought up by Government of India, and we are training youth. First problem here is most youth don't come forward for joining these programs. The government websites that we have where we are supposed to pull the candidate from have a large, big list of people who are actually not existing in reality, or they have never actually enrolled on this program. There's a lot of fake data on the government website. And then even if we, with great difficulty, fetch people to do these programs, suppose a boy who comes from, a girl who comes from Gulbarga and does this program. She gets kind of 7,000 to 8,000 rupees paid in Bangalore city, which is probably not enough for her accommodation and food itself. So further, even if they complete the program, they don't really get employed and work. I have had this experience because we have this skill training program for youth at our institution. So I think these need to be addressed. And local employment opportunities. So you take care what are the local needs of that place, create programs there and ensure that they are placed. Only then it works. With regards to other education programs, I just read a LinkedIn post of one of my friend. He is an engineer, motor vehicle designing, and I think there are some very innovative things come up, and we say we need this kind of a new course or new program because a lot of new universities are coming. We are talking about innovation and new programs are developed. But there's least attention given to whether these children get employed after they get trained through these programs. One such example I can give of nursing. We have, postgraduate nursing programs are very much required. It's written in 2017 health policy, national health policy document. However, in our country, we do not have any placements for the postgraduate nurses. So we need to, before we roll out program with excitement, we need to be making sure that whether we have employment opportunities. Otherwise, we are going to have very frustrated youth in this country. So that's all I had to say.
Thank you. Actually, you opened up two more important issues which we need to now get into for discussion. One is with regard to, of course, health is another component which we need to discuss, but employment related issues and especially entrepreneurship. Incidentally, we have Mr. Manas Das Gupta who has joined now online, who is part of the Bangalore Chambers of Industries and Commerce, but also he'll introduce himself, of course. Maybe I would miss out on some of those aspects, but also the head of Wealth Technology India, ANZ chairperson of ICT and 3I committee of BCI, innovation leader and diversity champion. Mr. Manas Das Gupta, while you catch up with the discussion that we are having, can I now go to, with your permission, to Manoj, who is with us here in the room, and then come back to you on the issue of employability and employment, because Manoj PK here has been an entrepreneur himself, who has, sort of had a rough journey through the system itself, and now he has established to become an entrepreneur, and then come back to you and a few others in the room. Manoj, on the aspect of entrepreneurship, I'm making a jump from health, but there are others who are also speaking on health. But since Manas Das Gupta is for only a few minutes with us, can I take your views and his, and then come back to health?
Sure. Yes. Hi, good evening, everyone. I'm going to talk on Kannada. First of all, today's startup model.
Loud.
Yeah, ಇವತ್ತು startup model ಯಾವ ತರ ಇದೆ ಅಂತ ಹೇಳಿದ್ರೆ ಸಸ್ಟೈನಬಿಲಿಟಿ ಇಲ್ಲ. ವ್ಯಾಲ್ಯೂಯೇಷನ್ ಮೇಲೆ ಸ್ಟಾರ್ಟ್ಅಪ್ ಎಂಟರ್ಪ್ರಿನರ್ಸ್ ಬರ್ತಾ ಇದ್ದಾರೆ. ಸಸ್ಟೈನಬಿಲಿಟಿ ತುಂಬಾ ಇಂಪಾರ್ಟೆಂಟ್ ಆಗುತ್ತೆ ಬಿಸ್ನೆಸ್ ಅಲ್ಲಿ. ವ್ಯಾಲ್ಯೂಯೇಷನ್ ತುಂಬಾ ಶಾರ್ಟ್ ಟರ್ಮ್ ಬಿಸ್ನೆಸ್ ಆಗುತ್ತೆ, ಲಾಂಗ್ ಟರ್ಮ್ ಬಿಸ್ನೆಸ್ ಆಗುತ್ತೆ. ಅದ್ರ ಮೇಲೆ ಸ್ವಲ್ಪ ಏನಾದ್ರು ವರ್ಕ್ ಮಾಡಬೇಕಾಗುತ್ತೆ. ಆಮೇಲೆ ಟೆಕ್ನಾಲಜಿ ರಿಹಾಬಿಲಿಟೇಷನ್ ಸೆಂಟರ್ಸ್. Today's youth, they don't know the browsing limitation. Once they go to the mobile or Facebook or WhatsApp, they spend hours to hours. Technology rehabilitation centers with a browsing limitation. That also I think we have to look into that. And street behavior with the public behavior. We should value our properties. To that also we have to work. And the more the skill and then answer prakara tumba. Skill is very important. And for nationality, after graduation, at least 3 months, they should train under Indian Army or any. Thank you.
Thanks, Manoj. Mr. Manas Das Gupta, maybe your intervention with regard to entrepreneurship and employability quotient among youth, maybe in Bangalore, Karnataka, and beyond that. You have any quick inputs there for a couple of minutes, and then we'll move on to the health component. Next, to go to Dr. Binoy after this. Over to you, Dr. Manas Das.
Yeah, so Mr. Manas Das Gupta, I don't have a doctorate degree. So thank you, and thank you for inviting me here. My 2 cents. I mean, I received that invitation and the document, the draft document yesterday only, and I was going through some of the parts. Didn't really have the chance to go through all of it, but some couple of things about the employability part, entrepreneurship part that involves our youth, especially in the grassroots level. If we look beyond, I mean, there are ample amount of opportunities and case studies and grants and policies, etc., existing, which are accessed very well by and well guided in the urban areas. However, we probably need to focus a little bit more on the rural side because we don't have enough evidence of success from the rural side of across India. I mean, not only Karnataka but across India. I mean, we are talking about Karnataka's draft youth development policy here. So let's talk about Karnataka also. We don't have too much evidence there. I had past interaction with some of the foundations who are working in this space, and even according to them, we see some examples of social entrepreneurship, but beyond that, evidences of entrepreneurship, real commercial innovation-based entrepreneurship coming from the rural side is that evidences are very little. Um, so I think we do need to put a little bit of focus there. There is, and that is one thing. And the second thing is that the opportunity, the information availability about the opportunities of entrepreneurship as well as skill development as well as credit, etc. Are not that great and structured. I think this is something that we can work on. So, in terms of information dissemination, if we can create a kind of marketplace in terms of both in terms of digital as well as non-digital modes. So, you are talking about the draft policy, the draft document talks about Yuva Sabalikarana Kendras. And information, if you can focus on information different dissemination in terms of credit availability, skill availability that can lead to better entrepreneurship, small businesses, small in innovation, etc., etc. So that is something that we can look at. And not only digital, we need to also focus on how in non-digital manner we can disseminate those information to the youth of to the local youth of various rural clusters, say tier 2, tier 3 cities as well as rural cluster. Maybe some kind of app also in terms of digital means, which will connect opportunities of credit, connect opportunities of skilling, push-based notification on those opportunities to the youth, as well as non-digital dissemination of those information.
Mr. Manas Dasgupta, one important point I would like to know from you, from the point of challenges. What is that main challenge do you see in terms of connecting youth to the endeavors of the state government towards entrepreneurship or skill development from your current position, especially as part of the BCIC? What is the one major challenge that you see and that the policy should also reflect upon?
See, in terms of, I mean, you ask a very pointed question about challenges in terms of connecting the youth to the state government.
Or entrepreneurship, especially skill development and entrepreneurship.
Yeah, yeah, that's right. So I think in terms of entrepreneurship, the major challenge they would face in tier 2, tier 3 cities as well as rural clusters is going to be the availability of the market itself or accessibility of the market in market where they exist, right? So and the unavailability or lack of awareness about the information thereof. So that is one thing that I think we can focus on. In terms of connecting your question about connecting those connecting the youth with regard to skill development and entrepreneurship, again I think one of the challenges information dissemination about those available opportunities of skill development, entrepreneurship, credit availability, connecting the sources of those credit and skill development bodies, etc., to the youth is I think is something that we need to look at.
Thank you, thank you. We'll come back to you for the next round of pointers to sum up the key points. But let me go to Dr. Pinoy, who is here, because he comes from very varied backgrounds of health and well-being, science, technology, and science communication. Would you like to take some of those key points that are emerging from here and suggest what the draft policy should be reflecting upon, especially the implementation point of view? Over to you, Dr. Binoy. And introduce yourself.
Thank you, Dr. Chetan, for the invite. My name is Binoy. I am from National Institute of Advanced Studies. I am an associate professor there, and I lead the science communication program. So when I will take, I don't take much time. I will take only 2 to 3 minutes only. So when Dr. Chetan sent me the document, I am from a pure science background. So then I thought, what could be my contribution to this? But then I found that when I started to explore the document, one thing that is, what do you mean by, like the Ms. Aishwarya said, what is the goal we want to achieve? So I started exploring what is the developmental goals and all that. So our professor and economics will be more familiar with that. But what I found was that one of the definition, I don't know who has given that, is that developing a socially accepted and a happy individual. The target of the youth policy or the youth programs should lead to somebody who is socially accepted at every level of society, and he himself or herself is happy with what she or he is doing. So one point I found in the document is that even though it talks about health and well-being, it's more going towards the social acceptance part than the happiness part. So we need to have a happiness component in that, because otherwise it is going to continue as incomplete. So then I will give the other points which I noticed. Even though it talks about the urban youth and rural youth, as all of you know better than me, that Bangalore and Karnataka is facing a lot of migration from urban to rural, from rural to urban as well as from the other cities. We are getting a big migration. And what happens that, the psychological expert here knows that when they come to the urban setups, especially from rural, they have to undergo a set of acculturation process, which ends up in a lot of psychological issues. So we need to handle that segment separately, because urban is there, rural is there. What is the connecting link that we have to talk about? Then the technology aspect, I found another thing is when I went through the graph, I found that around 50% of the population has education qualification is less than 10th standard. And on the other side, like Dr. Manas just said, you have a lot of information at one side, a lot of demand at another side, there is no connectivity. And you are talking about open universities and all that. How we will be helping these people to connect and use that information and utilize it and upgrade themselves, that we need to explain a little bit more, need to work out a little bit more. And another point I noticed was that we have to prepare for climate change. We are an unlucky youth, even though I am already out of the definition of the youth now, is that on one side we had pandemic, now we are moving towards the climate change impact. So we need to discuss how youth will be prepared for the climate change aspects. So that is another element I want to bring the attention of the committee. And the third element in education, now the next generation is going to compete with AI. So whatever job AI can do, AI will be doing. And if you are able to do a job which AI cannot do, then you have the demand. So we need to think about that element also, how the disruptive technologies and the impact of disruptive technologies will be utilized for the benefit of the youth. And 2 more points only. And another thing I found was that there is a more lenience towards top-down approach in the system. So we need to think a little bit more about the bottom-up approach also, how to empower the SHGs, how to empower the self-help groups, how to promote frugal innovation. There, like Mr. Kirtan has suggested, we need to think about appropriating the already existing systems. The universities are there, colleges are there, how to build a network and appropriating the already existing system instead of bringing a totally new system and new funding for that, how to appropriate the system in a more efficient way, that we will have to think about. And most importantly, another element which I found need more deliberation is the sustainability of the intervention itself. Because it does not talk about how this can be sustainable. We talk about a policy for 10 years, 5 years, like that. But it is not like that. Tomorrow this youth will be going, others will be adding to that. So this is like a permanent system which undergoes a lot of database changes. So that we need to get the grassroots level data also. So for that, we need to come out with again a public involved, local institutions involved, education institution involved, and student involved. Because I forgot your name, you said a majority are in educational institutions. If it is an urban youth or if it is a rural youth, they will be in search of the jobs. So we have to find how the data will be coming from the background, how this data is processed with the support of the public itself as well as the expert, and how it will be giving feedback to the existing system. That's all from my side.
Thank you, Dr. Binoy. I think, of course, there's a wide spectrum of thoughts, but to narrow down for the subsequent panelists to come in, I would narrow down to three important pointers. One is the rural to urban sort of migration issues which are associated, which is very critical. Second is the climate change related issue. And third is this whole sustainability of the sort of suggestions that have come in.
Adding happiness index.
Happiness, that's the last point, yes.
Yeah, I would like to say that as a developed advocate, point you have raised is absolutely correct, which is that most of the great advances have been made by maladjusted people in this world. So, I mean, if you think of that, you wonder whether, trying to solve psychological problems is the way to go forward.
With regard to climate change, yeah. With regard to the climate change, before I get to that point, one important point I would like to make is these are the points, as Ashwini also made points, others. I think our School of Social Science are faculty members who are experts in the respective domains, psychology, data science, and sociology, and also other social sciences who are there. I think that will be a good value add for us to extend it forward. And I'm glad that these are also points coming out for our subsequent tasks. But coming to the climate change issue, which is, I think, for the first time we are talking along with the sustainability that Mr. Najib brought in. Shravan, what are your interventions? Because you have a very interesting endeavor of seed to sapling. Sam. Yeah. So how do you see the awareness about climate change?
Yeah, as a way forward,
Whether it is a part of organization or independent of that?
yeah, I'll clarify this misconception. So the name, I'm with an organization called Seed.
Say education, yeah.
Yeah, Seed Sapling Education. So looking at the first half, it may seem like it's related to environment or something, but the idea is each child, the analogy is each child is like a seed, right? It comes as a seed, and which has to be nurtured and given the environment so that they blossom and flourish to become a sapling. So it's a philosophical name. It's nothing related to do with environment as such. So yeah, this is the clarification. And regarding the points, right? So I never knew that there is something called Karnataka Youth Policy. So until Dr. Chetan shared me this, there's a dialogue on this. So one important aspect is we are making a youth policy, and not many youth are aware of that something like this exists. Right? So youth should be participatory in at least in taking inputs and also informing that there is something like this. See how you can participate, right? And this is the unfortunate situation that there are a lot of government initiatives and programs, but none of us are aware of it. So the intention is good. The intention at the government level is good, but it is not reaching the end person, right? So in this direction, this Karnataka Youth Policy, they have, as it was mentioned, that it inculcates works from several departments, right? And I think many of us would have experience interacting with government bodies or something. And we know how they work. They take their own sweet time in doing things and all those things. And now we are expecting them, multiple bodies, to come together and do something. So we can imagine what would happen, right? So instead of this, I would like to suggest that youth can participate at the ground level, right? To bridge the gap of lack of information of various schemes or programs that government has, be it state or central government, to reaching it to the people, especially the rural population. Since the rural adult population, they may not have access to technology and they'll be very ignorant of these things. So the youth in this range, 15 to 29, who have access to technology and who are good at using this, right? They can make use of the platform and bridge this gap. I'm saying this especially from the example of recently, you might have heard of this Rally for Rivers movement, right, by Isha Foundation. So they did just this. So they went with they took hundreds of thousands of volunteers, and there were already schemes supporting tree-based agriculture for farmers. But there were a lot of support systems by the government, but the farmers didn't know of how to make use of it, right? They didn't know how to register or like how to get the benefits. So the volunteers just did this, and the impact was tremendous. So youth can participate more in the ground level, and they can make their own groups locally, right, within the villages or towns or districts, and do a lot of different things. So this is one aspect, and the idea of youth development index is fantastic, but there is a lot of scope, and the metrics that have been mentioned are like very high level, and they don't go into the details. Right? So, for example, in health and well-being, malnutrition indicators. Just because someone is not malnutrition doesn't mean they are healthy, right? There are a lot of other factors. And even if you see arts and culture, it says tracking the number of events organized. Is that sufficient? So we have organized those many events, but what is the impact? How many people have attended it? What was the benefit of it? So there are a lot of such gaps in the development index which needs to be addressed. Yeah, there are many other points which earlier some of you had mentioned, especially with respect to health. So health, with respect to health, we talk about we only talk about once things have happened, right? So for example, mental health. So we talk about once someone gets depressed, what are the support structures, either with respect to family, friends, or society, or even medical health. But should we not think and put major efforts in preventing that? Should we like go through that and then seek help, or should we empower ourselves so that not many of us are in that situation? So this is with respect to both physical and psychological health, right? When we say that the government says, okay, we have built 500 bed hospital or 1,000 bed hospital, I don't see it as a matter of pride. In fact, it is very ashamed to see that we are progressing towards ill health. Right? Isn't that the meaning that we are needing more hospitals? Should we not go in the other direction? We definitely need hospitals to treat different ailments, say accidents or virus things, but it should not become mainstream. So with respect to health, it should more measures should be taken in preventive measures, not curative measures. Yeah, there are many
Come
other
back to you.
yeah.
I know there are a few more points, but the time, I'm trying to take all of the point, but if there's a time, we'll come back to the second intervention. So I think the point is well taken. Preventive care versus curative is very critical, and all other points. But we have Vikas with us, who is also the sort of founding team member of Local Niti among students. So how do you see yourself? Because what Mr. Dr. Binoy said about the issues of well-being, happiness, and so on and so forth. How do we make sure that this intervention happens such a way that the policy can accommodate some of the concerns that you are on the ground being engaging very seriously? So what are those issues, and how do you see they should be reflecting, and what is not there in the draft policy according to you?
Hello everyone, my name is Vikas again. Thanks for introducing me. Apart from this, I have nothing particularly profound to add. I think everyone covered a lot of important points. But I do have something that I want to talk about, and that is the topic of incentivization. Now, all of these things, we have a lot of things to say on what youth ought to do, right? Like they should be doing this, they should be reducing their social media usage, they should sign up for the army because of discipline issues or whatever the reason may be. But what about the incentives to do these things? That's something I feel that is particularly lacking. Like when we are talking about climate change, even right now, for someone, example, take a personal anecdote here. I had to travel from Sarjapur. I did not have my own vehicle because it's ridiculously far. And I did not want to either because of climate change and also to save money and a bunch of things. But what are the incentives for us, someone like, let's say a youth or anyone even, to travel long distances in cities like Bangalore? So public transport is something that is still a big challenge to access. And another thing I want to point out is appropriating current current tools that already exist. For example, there's an app called Tumok that is to digitize bus passes and a bunch of other things, but it's not something that is popular yet amongst the majority of youth. A little mini survey that I conducted with some of my friends, not many people know that this app even exists. Whereas in the policy, there's one recommendation that says that create a new platform and an app to serve as a community, to serve the community for young entrepreneurs in the state. We don't need new apps. We need to use existing apps to facilitate a bunch of these discussions. And coming back to incentivizing a bunch of reasons to take up noble great tasks like using public transport or walking. These are things that need to be taken up by local governments in, let's say, providing proper footpaths, proper cycling tracks to help curb and mitigate the effects of climate change. That has to come not in a forceful way, but in a way that can be done in a way that people want to do it because it's easy, it's not inconvenient for them to take this up. So apart from that, I don't have any more things to add. I just want to say that the document is wonderful. I think it covers a lot of important issues. But again, we need to also look at it in a realistic way. Is it something that can be achieved? This is something the youth want to do, or is something that we're going to, forcefully put down the youth throats?
Yeah, thanks.
I think one point, sir. One essential incentive would be good roads. Without good roads, whether you travel on public transport or you use your own transport, it is of no use. That would be the first incentive which the state is required to, in fact, do that.
So I think we also have students who have submitted their short notes with regard to what is their aspiration from the youth policy. So maybe we should take your pointers quickly. So let me call in Vishwesh, and then of course Shivramji is waiting there with his thoughts. I'll come to you. Yes, yes, we will come to you because we want to give good attention to that particular sector. So I'll request students who have submitted their short notes for being part of this discussion. So Vishwesh, what are your expectations from the policy? What do you think are the gaps and how do you feel that?
So I think, first of all, I'm Vishesh. Good evening, everyone. Thank you for having me here. I'm a current postgraduate student from the Azim Premji University. I believe the document is a good commitment from the state's end in order to nurture and foster youth capabilities and also believe as to how youth should be can sort of be a part of development. I have some problems over here, and which first of all that initially we pointed out at the whole idea of youth for development and development for youth. I think here we are undermining the capabilities of youth, and we see that the youth is a subject that has to be taken care of. But there are ideas of volunteerism, energy, enthusiasm that are ingrained in youth in itself, which has to be fostered and nurtured. So the moment we look at development for youth taking precedence in this sort of policy document, we look at youth as a sort of subject that has to be oriented towards a particular direction, which I feel is a little problematic for me. As a youth, I feel there are certain human capabilities that I have that has to be fostered, of course, through different things. Which brings me to my second point that this sort of orientation needs some philosophical grounding and this philosophical grounding that the policy document should take a stance upon, because whatever these social issues of youth that we are talking of arrive from systemic issues, and these systemic issues like unemployment, health, all of that everybody pretty much in the room covered, but that is something that we should be constantly thinking about as to how all the systems can work in tandem with each other and look at issues of higher order first that gets at the then that percolates at the level of the youth. What I want to particularly emphasize upon is this idea of 15 to 29, the age bracket that is there, because you look at it from a developmental perspective, a 15-year-old versus a 29-year-old have very different needs. And until and unless we really think through, even in terms of matrix, in terms of recommendation, in terms of action points that have been mentioned in the policy document, we really need to have a different approach in terms of what is it that we're looking at. For example, enrollment rates is one of the under education and training as a focus area that has been talked about, but that doesn't stand true for someone between the bracket of 25 to say 29, where do enrollment rates come in for them? The issues and challenges are absolutely different for them. Which brings.
Do you have any suggestion on that, on enhancing enrollment? From
Yeah.
your sort of point of view on that?
That's what I also, going back to my second point, which is that these are systemic issues. We need to, so merely looking at data as evidence will not sort of serve the purpose. We're saying there are suicide rates like Dr. Ashwini pointed at, but why suicide? We need to get to the root cause of these issues, and these research and the advocacy organizations that are working and coming up with reports have to constantly feed into this policy draft documents. Is only when we can come up with a more substantial sort of.
You are suggesting for an evidence-based policy intervention.
An evidence not in the current shape.
Current shape,
We
yes.
really get to the root cause of the issues, try and identify, because the root, say for example, a root cause for suicide in a rural setting can be a farmer economic crisis, which is very different for an urban sort of a youth. So
Contextually understand the evidence and then align it to the policy aspect,
right.
and which would also help in implementation.
Absolutely.
So there's a lot of timeline plus also monitoring mechanism
Correct.
there.
Two more quick points that I'd like to make is in terms of the process. We say that these Ma'am Aishwarya did mention that they did go to district, they did try to reach the last mile youth of it. But I believe, did we really go to the most underrepresented communities? Because I really feel this policy in draft, in its current form, fails, say, a tribal youth in the Yadgiri district of Karnataka. So we really need to think through different channels and different mechanisms where it is a sociologically inclusive policy document, and it takes into account the voices of youth at the last mile across different contexts. Which needs to be thinking through about these, like I said earlier, the recommendations, the action point, even the matrix, the youth development index that we've been talking of. They really need to be, they have to get down to a very substantial sort of a process, because we know the way our bureaucracy functions at this point. There is a pressure to feed in quantitative data, like my friend also pointed out. Where are we bringing in the qualitative aspects? Where are we bringing in the voice of youth? So these are some of the points.
I think that one cue I take from there is the inclusivity. I'm sure other points we are noting down for the sake of continuity.
Based on this 15 to 29 having diverse needs, right? So in NEB, what they have done, the previous 10+2 structure, it has been broken into 5+3+3+4, based on the developmental needs of the child. So maybe similar thing can be thought out in this age group, 15 to 29, identifying the different needs and requirements and whatever the physical and psychological needs and social entrepreneurial needs during this age group. So maybe it can be broken down into 2 or 3 stages and then addressed separately. So that may be one possibility.
It will also help in the continuum from school to higher education and eventually. So Shivaramji, Vishesh actually brought in the issues of inclusivity, concerns around youth. And then after you, I want to go to Charvi because the LGBTQA plus. It is also a very important component to discuss. So, Shivaji, you have anything to add in this inclusivity component of this policy?
Thanks for inviting me for this discussion. First of all, I take this opportunity to thank the entire committee and all the delegates. Yeah, all the delegates who brought a lot of important points in this discussion. I would like to look at this policy. I have not read the policy, but listening to all the discussion points, couple of thoughts coming in my mind. As you know, disability is no more a health issue.
Yeah.
More of a development issue
Yes.
and a human rights. If we look at
Shivaramji, sorry, you did not introduce yourself, sir, for that.
Shivaram Deshpande, I represent Samarthanam Trust for the Disabled. It is a 25-year-old organization working with people with disabilities and backward sections of the society in India. So, yeah. So, I was talking about
Disability.
Yes, Sustainable Development Goals, which clearly states no leave, leave no one behind. There are 7 explicit references given in the document in 17 different goals where it clearly talks about a disability. I really, as a person with disability, would like to see explicit references about disability in this policy. Point number 2, there are national and international instruments which are available for people with disability. One such piece of document which clearly proves that United Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disability, UNCR. We have to bring that reference here. Now, point number 2. Point number 3, the Rights of Persons with Disability Act 2016 clearly mandates civic and political participation of people with disabilities. Again, that has to be brought in here. And any policy in that matter, especially youth policy, I will look at non-discriminatory policy. When we define any strategic intervention, there should be a specific reference to people with. All of you spoke about livelihood, psychosocial issues. All these problems exist in the society, and people with disabilities are not different here, and their issues and needs to be considered. And accessibility. Some of you spoke about stadium, sports, right? We are organization promoting sports. Some of our students got an award, by Prime Minister. So still we are struggling for the empowerment for them. The youth policy should address accessibility aspect. When I talk about accessibility, it's not just only the physical accessibility. We don't need to look at only person on a wheelchair. We need to look at all types of disability into it when we talk about technological accessibility and physical and environmental accessibility. So, apart from that, when it comes to the education, important point, somebody, Dr. Vinay, I think see, many of our visually impaired people, they are good at listening and memory, and they are unable to take up science and maths. So it is important that the they should give preferences or have a scope for them to take up specialized courses in the field of science and technology. And current pedagogy and curriculum system is not accessible for students with disability, especially who wanted to take up science and technological course. So there is a lot of scope for the policy to look at. I think these are the points which I thought of.
Anyways, we'll.
And last but not the least, tracking mechanism. One of the speakers spoke about mainstreaming aspect. We look at really mainstreaming disability aspect into larger community development. Any sector that you take, we would like to see what extent disabled students are enrolled, retained, promoted, and gone to the next level. If it is a training, what extent disability is addressed there. If it is sports, everywhere disability should be there. That's all I know.
Thank you, sir. I think this is what you call the opening pointers. We will anyways need some more information in order to build this section, because currently the document talks about annex.
My feedback on
Please, yes, sir.
Share it with
Doctor,
Sure.
small clarification. The document states that it consulted Samarthan Trust for Disabled. Is it the same trust?
Yes.
Yes.
So, yes.
Yes.
Thank you.
Actually, Mr. Chetan, I just want to intervene here and just thank the Samarthan Trust.
Yes, yes.
Because Mr. Mantesh actually came for one of the
Yes,
consultation sessions. But of course, there is still a lot of things that we need to put in. So thank you, sir. We will put all that. But this is one trust which is really empowering the disabled. As in, I don't know anybody else who's doing the kind of work that they are doing. It's
In
wonderful.
fact, our relationship with Samarthan Trust goes long time ago to NEP also, where they had given their inputs. Thank you, Shivramji. Sharvi, yeah.
Can I just point out something here? He has brought up a very important point.
Yes.
So I would just say that if the youth policy, if we take the bird's eye view, just a very basic policy and then fill in the details, then I would say that we use the word inclusive.
Yes.
I mean, that is something which is lacking. It is, one part of it is what he has been talking about,
yeah,
Mr. Deshpande has been talking about, but there are other types of inclusivity also we should not falter.
Yes. That's where I want to call in Charvi, because she's also representing her ideas on the LGBTQA plus. Because we also heard other inclusivity, but maybe Charvi, you want to share your thoughts on this, how we can integrate some of your thoughts into the policy if there is a gap.
Thank you so much, sir.
Speak into the mic, please. If you don't mind. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you so much, sir. My name is Charlie, and I'm a third-year law student at Faculty of Law, PES University, Bangalore. Representing that community seems too big a word, but I can only talk of it once I read the document that, especially when I did the terms of encouraging more female participation in the workforce. So that got me thinking that none of these statistics talk about the LGBTQIA community, which is a minority, yes, but it's also gaining a lot of traction and a lot of awareness is being spread about this particular community over the past few years, especially after the NALSA judgment in 2014, which deemed the LGBTQIA community the respect of a third gender and that they also have the same fundamental rights as men and women. Right. So, in particular, this judgment talks about Article 16 of the Constitution, which talks about how employment must be given without any discrimination, especially in the public offices. Now, when we talk about this policy, it has no mention of LGBTQIA community, not only in terms of employment, but also in terms of education. So it's very important to even educate people about the different sexual orientations because it's high time that we are open to such concepts and we start accepting them as well. And like Mr. Dr. Binoy said about socially acceptable individuals, I think it's high time they're also accepted socially. So that is one thing that I found was lacking in this draft. And additionally, like Ms. Aishwarya ma'am stated that she's the only woman representing the entire female community in the committee. I don't know if there are any representatives from the LGBTQIA community. So I think if that can also be amended in some way, it would be great. Furthermore, let's talk about arts and culture for that matter. We know that the recently Padma Shri awardee, Manjama Jogati is a very big representative of the transgender community, and she was awarded for her contribution in the field of arts, and she is the first president of the Karnataka Janapada Academy. So when the entire country is moving towards the direction, it's only fair that this draft also encourages some policies towards for the benefit of the LGBTQIA youth. So yeah, that is what I'd like to suggest.
Thank you. So maybe I'll take the first aspect of what we're talking about inclusivity. Because Project Sitara, which Shreya is coming from, they also engaged with underserved community in terms of education. So you would like to add anything on the inclusivity component from the youth draft policy point of view?
Hi, I'm Shreya, founder of Sitara. We work a lot with children from rural communities, and I hope what I'm saying is representing some of the needs that they have shared in the past. I think, like, overall hopeful about where this document is going, but one thing which broadly encompasses what a couple of people mentioned is tech literacy as a whole. Owing to the fact that COVID-19 literally forced all parts of India to move into the digital era much faster than we predicted. I think that could be one reason why the cyberbullying, threat to women, rapid AI evolvement, all of that. But the fact remains that there are still regions in Bharat, in rural Karnataka especially, where children aren't even equipped with the skills to use basic technology. So tech literacy as a whole could try to cover most of these things. Um, Sorry, not too much along the lines of inclusivity, but something that I did want to bring up was when I look at the document as a problem-solving process, there is discover, investigate, solve, and maybe replicate. And I feel most parts of the document is still stuck in the discover or investigate loop, whereas people have identified that these problems exist already. And there are amazing organizations, individuals who are working in this space who have already investigated into the problem. So are we reinventing the wheel by saying collect data, analyze data, create plans? Can we save time and maybe work with these individuals or organizations instead? Uh, the third thing is when we're using words like revamp the system, contextualize, stuff like that, I'm unclear as to what is the output of it. And adding to that, there are no timelines associated. It's an 8-year plan, so not able to understand when is each of this going to be achieved. And because we're using very vague terms like this, I think it's very important to have metrics that are directly correlated. So in the table, it would be great if we can have recommendations, action points, and metrics right next to that so that we can track them. Having a clear demarcation between output and outcome would also become important because the draft policy and the committees could be doing everything and great outputs, but the outcome of it could be influenced by various other things. So just being cognizant of that. And if we're saying YDI is one way of tracking these larger outcomes, it's very important for us to have the YDIs tracked right now as a pre-assessment so that we are able to say what is the change that was created. So I would love to know more about the YDI. Actually, I feel not too much was covered. And last point was about the social reward system. I feel I may have misinterpreted it, but please do correct me if I'm wrong. I wasn't too much fond of the fact that we're trying to reward people to be doing things that they ought to be doing. Incentivizing it would simply mean that if it doesn't work, then we might think of how do we incentivize it better rather than thinking of what were actually the problems. So don't want to get stuck in the loop of trying to incentivize volunteering or social responsibilities because it has a direct correlation with the quality of work that comes out of it.
Yeah. Thank you. Aishwarya, I know you want to come in, but we have few more people to say their thoughts, but I hope you are holding on to this thought and come back if there's anything to add to what Shreya.
So everybody's making great points. So as in, I'm noting all of it down.
We'll also be submitting the same with further inputs, so we look forward to aligning the notes with you. Samira, since we have been talking about arts, culture, and also the YDI talks about arts, culture as a component. So you have been, as a student, in the forefront of engaging in stage dramas and also street plays, and also as a youth and as a potential sort of professional coming up in this segment, how do you see that policy is to be envisaging some of those things? Since you're in the corner, you may find the mic nearby, and because Aishwarya may not be able to hear and understand because
Trying to point out Vinod's point,
Okay.
deculturalization. These other states actually have the problem faced by the northern states due to language. We are not facing a problem due to the localites traveling or migrating to the urban areas. We are facing problem from the other states who are migrating to the local area, which is the Karnataka or Bangalore region. So, I believe the theme which caught my eye was the art and culture, because there is hardly a page which talks about that. The rest all points have it 1.5 page or something like that, but art and culture is hardly 3/4 of.
So one of the main point was that the index is focusing on input metrics, especially here tracking the number of events organized to promote arts and culture. So what are your specific thoughts on that?
I believe the theme should be art, language, and culture.
Okay.
Because language is the bridge to both art and culture. So what Kannada poet Dara Bendre, who says Kannada in a Mansina Kannadi, that he talks that all I could think of is language, which is Kannada, which I can see the world through Kannada. Because there was a book by the Kannada Sahitya Parishad which said that I need not prove my patriotism by knowing only Indian history. I can prove my patriotism by knowing the history of Kannada and Karnataka. My recommendations would be three recommendations. One is encouraging the propagators who actually want to pursue art as a profession. So I recently had this experience where there is a Ravindra Kalakshetra which actually gives the all to perform art at a minimal rate. But we performing art, the faculty who perform art are unable to recover the money which we are spending on the for the rent and the expense we do. We have it for ourselves or using performing art. 1 month of practice and for only for 10 people we perform. So the hall can accommodate around 500 people and we are performing in front of only 10 people and that is really bad. So that is the first point, encouraging the propagators who want to continue their profession in art. And one more is regarding the deculturalization from the rural to the local rural people to the urban. I believe language-based medium of education should be started down. That is first language as English, second language as Kannada. That has to be shut down. I feel it has to be rather retrained as language one and language two, rather than first language and second language, so that you get the encouragement from the local areas who come to the urban areas who come to that have the education. And I strongly believe the universities of Karnataka, the other universities have failed to, I can put it in this sense, they failed to, the other science terminologies, they failed to reframe it in Kannada. So that is my second point. And third one is I told that regarding patriotism, introduction of history of Kannada and Karnataka in social science textbooks, along with Indian history, especially in Karnataka domain. So that this could actually make us to think of art and culture through language. These are my points.
And we are the first school of Ramaiah University of Applied Sciences. We are the first school wherein we have introduced Kannada as a language for all the 4 programs, BS LLB honors and BA LLB honors, BCom LLB honors, BBA LLB honors. ಕನ್ನಡದಲ್ಲಿ ಎಲ್ಲ ಸಾಹಿತ್ಯಗಳನ್ನ ಸಾಹಿತ್ಯಕಾರರ ಬಗ್ಗೆ ಹೇಳಲಾಗುತ್ತದೆ. ಬೇಸಿಕ್ ನಾವು ಹೊರಗಿನ ನಾರ್ತ್ ಈಸ್ಟ್ ಇಂದ ಬಂದವರನ್ನು ಕೂಡ ಕನ್ನಡ ಕಲಿಯುವಾಗ ನಾವು ಮಾಡಾಕತ್ತೀವಿ.
Whether to have Kannada as an
option is
Yeah, so I think we'll get into that discussion, but point is well noted. Okay, so and we will share it as part of the discussion. It is left to the committee to reflect upon some of these things and take that forward. But we have Nishita with us, who's waiting for a long time, because I wanted her and Matthews, who's also with us, who's representing the sports, and Anshu Pal, also who has shared his thoughts, and Ansi. So there are 4, and we are running short of time, 4 and 4 minutes. So I think it is important that you please share from your sort of ongoing research that you're doing. Though you're from the media and journalism sort of discipline, but I know that your interest is not limited to that. But from the discussion that you are gathering here, what are your set of contributions or insights the policy should focus on?
Chetan, I'm Nishita. I'm from University of Mysore. I'm doing PhD in journalism and mass comm, specifically health communication interventions. But here I actually chose to spoke about skill development, although the policy speaks very sparsely about it. Just touching now on both focus areas. Number 1, education and training, and the second one, employment and entrepreneurship. But in the globalized world that we are living in today, where youth have global exposure, skills are very, very important. So it's important that we speak about it. The awareness of or the significance of skills itself is not being spoken about. So that is the lacuna that I see in the policy document, otherwise also elsewhere. In fact, the Sustainable Development Goals, Target 4.4, it speaks about quality education, where they specifically stress that appropriate skills need to be obtained by youth, including technical and vocational skills. And also World Economic Forum, they keep stressing on skills when it's a non-governmental organization in their job report. the founder and executive chairman of World Economic Forum. He's also an economist himself. He tells that upskilling and reskilling can address the problem of job displacement. In fact, during the tea break, I was talking to Pro Vice Chancellor about job switching and all that, and how upskilling can actually scale up not only businesses but also the job opportunities. It has a win-win situation. A skilled professional not only can get jobs anywhere, but he or she is also an asset to an organization. So wherever they go across the world, they are always an asset. So here, my contributions are, that is my recommendation is, like Mr. Basanna spoke, there needs to be target groups, because in the policy, the age group is 15 to 29, and the policy cannot be one size fits all. So I have a recommendation that the first group can be age 15 to 21 or 22, called the students group. So they can have different set of skills to be trained in. The second one, job entrance, between the age of 22 and 25, because as soon as they enter the job, what are the challenges they face in terms of both hard skills and soft skills? Because as the World Economic Forum says, soft skills like problem solving, creativity, curiosity are equally important. And the last target group, the experienced youth, ages between 25 to 29, where they have about 2 to 3 years of experience, and they might need some upskilling and reskilling. So these maybe, like, when you make targeted groups, you can have programs for that. The second recommendation was, before the discussion, I had put it as self-help groups of women, but after Charlie's thing, I'm personally an advocate of LGBTQ rights. So I think there should be types with NGOs and CBOs, that is community-based organizations, who can also type with LGBTQI community. So we see a lot of youth from that community. For example, Dr. Trinendra from Manipal, who is a social influencer herself. So we can type with such CBOs for training in skills. And the last one is tying up with grassroots level organizations like Gram Panchayats and all, so that we address the skill gap among the rural youth. So basically, there is a demand for jobs. We see that there are a lot of demand for jobs. There are also a supply of jobs. Because recently in an online session, I got to know that there was an organization who's been looking for graphic designer and video editor for 6 months, and they haven't found. So that means there is a supply for job, there is also a demand, but there's a gap, and that gap is lack of skill development. So that is where the policy can step in. So this.
Yeah, thank you. I think that you have extended Dr. Prasanna's point into actionable groupings, for example, as linking to skill development. Mr. Anshu, you also talk about employment in your note. So any sort of reflections on what Shita was saying to extend that point?
Good evening, everyone. I'm Anshu Pal. I am a research intern at the Center for Social and Policy Research at Christ University. I am a former member of the Social Science Talent Search Scheme at ISEC. I'm also UGC net qualified to be an assistant professor of sociology. So there are several points that I'd like to state as recommendations for the youth policy, and they all center on the UN Sustainable Development Goal, reduced inequality. And I say these points based on the capabilities approach to development. First is organizational psychologists or industrial psychologists who've had years of experience in research or corporate jobs must be employed at the Yuva Sabalikarna Kendras as career guidance counselors and professional trainers. They have knowledge of how companies work, they have knowledge of leadership styles, professional language, and communication protocol. They also know about the nature of organizational hierarchies. These are things that the youth have to especially know if they have to navigate in the workplace and also establish themselves in their careers and be successful. Therefore, organizational and industrial psychologists at these Yuva Sabalikarna Kendras will be very valuable for training youth. And I say these points based on the book Industrial Psychology by N. Singh. Second is that more action research projects have to be conducted in collaboration with universities and policy research think tanks, which take into account the development of English language skills, business soft skills, computer training, and internet etiquette. I remember having interacted with many university students in Karnataka that most of them, in terms of their English language skills, leave a lot to be desired. English is the language that is used most widely in academia, in the corporate sector, and in research. But most of them are unable to comprehend news articles, media content, or even universities' websites, from which they can otherwise gain a lot of information. In addition, they have been unable to apply to better paying jobs that require high English proficiency, which would have otherwise secured them a much more secure life than what they have for themselves now. So this means two things. One was that they were unable to develop their social capital and knowledge, and second, they could not gain a proper livelihood. Therefore, I state this second point. Third, teacher training under the Guru Chaitanya program of diets, as well as the Nishtha program, have to be made compulsory as far as education is concerned for making students' education more relevant and skill endowing. The National Education Policy 2020 has mandated 50 hours of compulsory professional learning for teachers. And this has been mandated with the goal to improve the way students learn and to improve their skills, so they can be a productive part of the workforce and also create more knowledge. Therefore, making Guru Chaitanya a compulsory program for all the teachers in Karnataka will allow this to happen. And this I take with reference to point 5.15 in the continuous professional development section of the National Education Policy. Fourth, collaborations have to increase with private sector firms and universities for creating leadership, professional training, mentoring, and apprenticeship programs for rural youth. The thing is that the youth have a lot of capacity. They form the bulk of the workforce for the country, and they have many aspirations for improving their own lives. In addition, one thing that I have seen is that in Germany, taking reference from the paper Apprenticeship, Vocational Training, and Early Labor Market Outcomes, is that because German firms like Volkswagen and Bosch have implemented apprenticeship programs, there have been much lower unemployment rates and much lower poverty rates in the country. And it must be noted that in Germany, income inequality is much less. Income inequality is becoming a glaring problem in India, and this is no less different for Karnataka. Therefore, considering how existing educational systems are still in the process of regearing themselves for improving educational outcomes and vocational outcomes, I suggest that the Karnataka state government, in collaboration with private firms, both established and emerging within the state, provide mentorship and apprenticeship programs for Karnataka's rural youth, so they can get employed and based on their performance and learnings in the organization, be employed. Then fifth.
Anshu, sorry, just quick point. Yes. You can make the last point in 30 seconds, because we'll have Ansi coming in and then we have Matthews.
Definitely.
We'll take the note from, of course.
Definitely. Thank you. Last point I'd like to make is that there must be more development in cognitive psychologists who should conduct weekly awareness programs at Mano Chaitanya clinics across the state and workshops on ethics, social relationships, emotional resilience, and conflict resolution. The biggest question that the youth have is on what kind of identity they should create for themselves. It's after they create an identity for themselves that they can self-actualize, that they can perform more productive activities for benefiting both themselves as well as others in society. However, they often face a lot of conflict with each other, and they have unease in terms of balancing social relationships. Therefore, having development and cognitive psychologists to support them through these workshops in Mano Chaitanya clinics will be extremely helpful for helping them cope with the existential challenges they face in their youth, and thus be more productive and fulfilling.
Thank you. I think you have also given suggestions on utilizing what is already there.
Yes.
From various sectors. So, Ansi, you have been on the field recently, engaging with your dissertation, and also the overall public policy program exposed you to so many issues around youth. What are your sort of interventions that you want to make for the draft policy to strengthen?
Good evening. My name is Ansi Rose George. I'm a student of MA in Public Policy at Ramaiah University.
So, what I feel like everybody was talking about mental health and like sexual hygiene and all. Apart from that, I would like to give my point of view on like why can't we add why can't we mention about promoting sustainable menstrual products in the establishment of menstrual hygiene centers across the various taluks, because that is a one of the prominent issue which is we are facing, because there are many products which is available in our in around us, but people are having that stereotypic that conservative thoughts about all these products, thinking that okay, this might can be a taboo for our culture or our society. So basically, if we are taking apart from this menstrual hygiene product, if we are taking mental health or sex education in schools, which we are able to provide to the youngsters, the first concern is how the first concern should be we need to give a clear image about what is mental health illness or issues, or what is sex education to the parents. Because if I'm from Kerala, so when the Kerala education education department, they came up with the concept of providing sex education in schools, there are many controversial issue talks which happen, like they're taking this sex education and mental health illness in a different way because of that word sex and mental health, which is denoting in this contemporary world. So what I would like to say is, before we implementing all these things, the points which given is okay, like everything is perfect, but the societal view about all these things should be considered before we move to the implementation process. And apart from that, here they have mentioned that counseling sections in schools. So before we are providing a counseling session, we should make sure that that counselor is a person who can talk with the students in a non-judgmental attitude, where the student can openly tell about their issues, and that counselor should be able to build a rapport between the student, because in schools we have seen that many students have gone through bullying, that which is a major reason which can affect their mental health, and also which can cause behavioral disorder in the coming years also, that which can lead them to be a criminal, or that it can also lead them to have certain psychological impact in their life. So my point of view that before implementing all these things, we should make sure that we are providing them properly qualified counselors in the school and schools for this youth, and we should be able to convey the proper concept to the society as well as to the parents before we are doing this implementation.
Yes, thank you. I think that is also because of the age target groups, if we are able to segregate them, and how we educate and create that awareness. Also, the important stakeholder parents.
Yes.
Because they are also critical in that first segment, as Nichita was flagging in terms of their role. So we have the last but not least speaker here for the day, Matthews. First of all, I take this opportunity to congratulate him because Matthew has won bronze medal. He's our student from School of Social Science, bronze medal as swimming in Khelo India recently. Congratulations, Matthew. Make us proud about this achievement. Now, sports, you are now, if I'm not wrong, the sole representative. We all do sports in our own ways, but you are a professional. So, what are your concerns that the youth policy ought to engage with or recognize? And what challenges you faced as reaching up to this goal and in future sort of goals that you want to?
First of all, I would like Chetan sir for giving this opportunity in such a huge platform. According to me, this is something I have always wanted to, every sportsman needs some concentration in all, in the general field. They have some issues in both physically and mentally. They go through a lot of things in their own ways. It might be the way of racing or exposure. That's the main thing which I would put upon. They don't know there are individual sports. They know only about cricket, football. They know there's a team sports, but they don't know about individual sports. That's the really thing which we are lacking. And individual sports has, if they, one of my friend, as I mentioned, Srihay and Altraj, one of my friend, one of my personal friend, we all sing together. It individual sports has a lot of exposure, and then individual sports has to take to really heights with their own hard work or whatever you put into. But then people don't see up to that level. They think it is more easy in a team so that they can get more results. But then if you put your hard work into it, I think that individual sports is really the best option a sportsman could get. And then I think all the sports should have the same equality. Just because one does swimming and the other has a lot of people doesn't mean that they're not somewhere like they're down and you have a lot of people in the team. And it should be seen the same way, not because it should not be discriminated in any kind of thing. And many people doesn't know there's a sport as swimming. I'm talking from my side, my sport swimming. So they don't know there's a sport, and there are many circumstances I've come across. So there will people ask me, "Do you swim?" And then I say yes, and then they don't even know where a pool is there in Bangalore. So this is as a person, as my sport, I feel people should know that there are many sports except football and cricket, and they should explore all of it. And yeah, all the sports should have an equal value in this country, and I think that is not something served right now. And
So, lack of diversity in sports
yeah.
is one thing that you would like to also highlight, and individual sports or the team sports. So that also becomes more commercial versus non-commercial also in a way. So I think the policy talks about promoting diversity in sports, but does not provide how do we go about doing that, right? So that is point well taken. Can I now take this opportunity to conclude? I'm sure we are overshot the time. That also shows the interest and the patience that all of you had. Many, many thanks for that. And also back end, we are also taking notes, literally live notes, our students who are sitting in the back there and here, so that we can have the document mailed tonight at the earliest. And tomorrow meet the drafting committee at this Yovanika Bhavan, right, that is on Riputinga Road, and hand over the document with them. And then, of course, Aishwarya has also assured that she will have, and the entire committee apparently is visiting Yovanika Bhavan tomorrow. They are meeting for the purpose of this comments which are coming from other parts of the country as well as the state and review them. So there's an opportunity for us to share that. Dr. Prasanna?
Yeah, being the first speaker, I have an advantage and disadvantage too. I covered very few points.
Yes.
Is there any way that I can send you the remaining points? So that
Yes. We are going to burn the midnight oil today.
Okay, I will send it to Kirti and your email ID that can be pushed because
So that we can hoist the flag. Right?
because being the first speaker,
I
I
know.
was under the impression that I'll get one more.
The time constraint,
Yeah,
yes.
so
Please
lot
do
of
share.
points I could
Please
not.
do
Yeah.
share. But that opened up a lot of thoughts eventually. But yes, thank you. But please do share those points. And others also, we request you. You have Kritika's email ID and Gauri or others who have been in touch with you. So when you get back, if you have your written notes, please send a picture of that also. We'll try to decipher it. I'm sure they will have a lot of insights in their own ways, right? All the designs that you have. So I take the opportunity. I don't want to belabor too much on the subsequent pointers.
Sorry, conclude.
Okay.
Two quick points, not more than 30 seconds.
Regarding the pointers for this.
Yeah, some pointers. So we saw that there are 20% youth in Karnataka in Bangalore, right? And it seems that the policy was okay with it, and that number is of course going to increase. So I think we should focus more on enabling opportunities for youth to stay wherever they are locally, and then give them more opportunities, right? Because population density is not desirable, and it's a multidimensional problem. And one more thing is
25 seconds.
Yeah. So youth committees that they are going to be there. So what are so whenever we hire some people, right, we list down the qualities and skills required. So there was nothing in this regard. for the people who are going to implement this. So they can come up with a list of skills and qualities it will be.
Yeah, I know there are many points following it up, but I have to conclude. Now, let me be a little bit more authoritative for the time being. I'm sure, as Vikas was mentioning, he has to go very far at the other end of the city, and I'm sure others also where come from. I'm a little thoughtful about that. So, but yes, please do again share those points if you've missed out, if you have written it down, and also I'm sure you can share your points. Once again, thank you all for your inputs. I would take less than a minute to ask my students to stand up for not as a punishment, but to make them visible, the people behind this effort. And one is online written, who was coordinating this online. So please do stand up wherever. It's a good exercise. So I would suggest, let me start from Ranjini there, who is doing her master's in public policy. Kritika, you all know. Maybe she's been spamming your inbox with reminders. And Shafana there, Gauri. And then we have Prithviraj, Jayasuman, Neha at that corner. So everybody is in each corner. They're sort of gatekeepers. So, and then Ritin, who was there. So, thank you all. It was, I think, I'm sure you all benefited, and we have benefited definitely. But this is not the first and the only sort of, interventions that we are making in this effort. We want to take this forward and go deeper into some of those themes that have come up, and have a deep dive in some of those aspects, explicit, a deep dive into those, and then have a working paper. And we also have a blog called Policy Milieu, which has been there, and Prithvi and Jayasuman and that batch of students have anchored it. Now the second batch is taking it forward. So I'd like to also use that platform to communicate and engage with some of these aspects, because I'm sure in a roundtable we only get perspectives, but we need to now get into the analysis of those thought process. And having said that, as I said, tomorrow we are going to hand over the document. We will also post you the copy of that document, what comes out eventually, at least the working notes. And we have also assured the, especially the Victoria, that tomorrow, because there's a deadline that we need to submit, but we will have an extended sort of conversation with the committee. I'm sure with all what they observed today, they would also want to know more. And we'll again come back to you. So please bear with us for an extended discussion by email or through phone call. So with this, I take the opportunity to thank each one of you, and definitely our own faculty members, colleagues who are there. They are not less knowledgeable of these things, but since it's a event where we are now going to again come back to you, our own faculty members, to extend some of this point, because especially psychology, the Department of Psychology here in social sciences, I'm sure they have a lot of insights. Then Department of Data Science, I think the youth index is something that, development index is something that we need to ponder upon. And our colleagues who work on science policy and all others who are here, I'm sure there's a lot of things to get into the details. Thank you once again for your attendance and patience for listening to everybody. Thank you.
Thank you. We are not.